Han Jini's voice was as calm as a calm lake. Jun Yang was calm and composed. However, this unperturbed expression made Yarrow Mo Wan really want to punch him. In the cold cave, water dripped onto the rocks, making a faint echo. In the depths of the cave, 4 people were happily guessing odd and even. Why is it a pair again? Feng Yihan, you cheated. Di Feng looked at the 2 stones left on the stone table. His eyes were spitting fire as he angrily rebuked. It can't be. If he cheated, how could this old man win? King Lulan raised his white brows and defended Feng Yihan. It's very simple, the 2 of you colluded with each other. Beside Di Feng, Duan Zitong glanced at Feng Yihan's sleeve and said meaningfully, "Little girl, it's not good to wrongly accuse people without evidence. This old man is already so old, how could I do such a dirty thing? I can't." King Lulan shook his head. Zitong really can't stand it anymore. Da Xia is poor to begin with. One of you is overflowing with wealth while the other has a strong army. Is there a need to bully people like this? Feng Yihan, do you dare to say that you don't have anything in your sleeve? Duan Zitong simply stood up and looked at Feng Yihan sternly. I don't have anything. Feng Yihan flung his sleeve and said innocently, "Don't move if you have the guts." "Shio." Duan Zitong said coldly. Then, he placed his finger on his lips and blew a strange sound. Almost at the same time, a shocking scene appeared. 2 fat GU worms crawled out from Feng Yihan's sleeves, each carrying a stone on their back. With the witness and material evidence present, Di Feng immediately went crazy. Feng Yihan, can't you be more shameless? I have a grudge against you. No matter what, you are still the ruler of a nation. Why are you playing this game with me? Di Feng clenched his teeth. In these few days, he had lost every game he played. He had almost lost half of Da Xia. When we attacked Da Ju, Yihan personally went to the battlefield. In the end, you got 3 cities. Yihan has to get back at you for losing, right? Even though his plot had been exposed, Feng Yihan didn't seem to be embarrassed at all. Who asked you to be slow? Is it my fault? Di Feng said resentfully, feeling somewhat guilty. That's not right. Little girl Duan, you still benefited from the whole thing. Since you got the benefits, why did you still expose Yihan? You. Don't tell me you've taken a fancy to this Di Feng brat. At the side, King Lulan gossiped like a wise man. Old man, what nonsense are you talking about? This young lady only saw injustice on the road and drew her sword to help. Hearing this, Duan Zitong's face instantly turned as red as a persimmon. When Yihan lost, why didn't Miss Duan draw her sword for Yihan? Feng Yihan sighed. In this day and age, were people's aesthetic standards distorted? He didn't dare to say it to others, but compared to Di Feng, he was definitely a handsome man. That's because Emperor Xia didn't cheat. Duan Zitong's face was red as she argued. Di Feng, do you dare to swear on the 10 years of Da Xia's national treasury that you didn't cheat just now? Feng Yihan shouted sternly. The 3 people's gazes fell on Di Feng. Of course. In my opinion, that shouldn't be called cheating. It's just a small trick. It's just a small trick. Di Feng immediately put away his confident face and laughed even more guiltily. I saw it. Little girl, you're favoring one and discriminating against the other. Actually, the prerequisite for choosing a husband is the character, like King Lulan said earnestly. But before he could finish, he was stopped by Duan Zitong. What's wrong with Emperor Xia's character? Since they both cheat, whose character is worse? Duan Zitong was so protective of Di Feng that even Di Feng felt embarrassed. If there's a flower to be plucked, then pluck it straight. Don't wait until there's no flower and only the branch. Di Feng, you're so lucky. Feng Yihan piled the stones together again and intentionally or unintentionally nagged. Cough cough, this time it's clear. No one is allowed to cheat, or else, your hand will be broken. Di Feng deliberately avoided the topic and talked about other things. Chapter 503. Ever since he ascended to the throne, Di Feng had decided not to consort for the next 3 years out of gratitude for King Xia's abdication. Thus, Di Feng was still single. As a single man, Di Feng still had needs for women. It wasn't that Duan Zitong wasn't good, but Di Feng couldn't bear to see those Gu worms, so he kept his distance from Duan Zitong. Adding on the fact that they had only known each other for a few days, they hadn't reached the point where they could tear through paper, so he decided to be ambiguous for now. You guys are having fun. Are you guys really not afraid of death? Or are you just pretending to be calm? We can tell at a glance. A cold voice drifted over. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw a black figure wearing a brown cloak walking step by step towards the iron railing. Yi Hongi, you wouldn't dare to kill this old man even if I lent you the gut. Ihan, move the stone, this old man will choose, said Kubu Dan coldly as his gaze shifted back to the stone in Feng Yihan's hand. Lousy chooses double. I don't believe that Lousy can't win once. Di Feng completely ignored Yi Hongi. Yi Hongi, don't give this young lady the chance, otherwise this young lady will definitely teach you a lesson for older sister Morshine, you heartless man. Choose double. Duan Zitong's gaze was cold. As she spoke, her wide sleeve trembled slightly and a completely black Gu worm quietly crawled towards Yi Hongi. Does King Chu not want to try his luck? Invited Feng Yihan with great self-restraint. You're about to die yet you still dare to boast shamelessly. There are still 10 days. If Yarrow Moen doesn't appear in front of us in 10 days, then we will personally send you all to hell, roared Yi Hongi fiercely. Yi Hongi, please take your medicine before coming out. Do you know the consequences of killing us? Do you think that your great Chu can defend against millions of elite soldiers from 5 countries? Said Feng Yihan disdainfully as he lifted his brows and glanced at Yi Hongi. As long as the King of Qi is alive, the generals of Great Qi will respond to his call. If the King of Qi is dead, they will only listen to the new King of Qi. Whether or not they will attack Great Chu depends on who the new King of Qi is, and whether or not they will avenge you. You are all members of the royal family, so you naturally understand the cruelty of the struggle for the throne. Now that you are on the throne, you are the heavens. If the Ming clan has entered the Yellow Earth, then what are you? Yi Hongi laughed coldly, his eyes bloodshot. Then if you kill this princess, let's see if Southern Master will let this matter rest, muttered Duan Zitong as she looked towards Yi Hongi. Before Yi Hongi could say anything, there was a loud smack. Duan Zitong's gaze turned cold. Gu worm? What else does the South have other than Gu worms? Unfortunately, we aren't afraid. By the time Yi Hongi lowered his gaze, the Gu bug Duan Zitong had released had already turned to ashes. How is this possible? Duan Zitong looked at Yi Hongi again in shock. Emperor Xia, believe it or not, as long as you die, the new Emperor Xia will most likely reduce taxes for 3 years to celebrate. There was also King Lulan. Lulan might have a lot of money, but wars were fought with real swords and spears. Did he want to use money to crush the soldiers of Great Chu? Heh. You guys think too highly of yourselves. Since I, Yi Hongi, dared to capture you guys, then I have the guts to bear the consequences. We advise you all to pray that Yarrow Moen arrives on time. Otherwise, we will definitely let you all have a taste of death. As for how you all die, seeing that you are all monarchs of a country, we will let you all die a quick death. Yi Hongi harumphed coldly as he turned around and stomped out of the cave. Double. Feng Yihan announced the result of the stones on the table. The fortune teller said that I can live to 80. What does this mean? Di Feng actually didn't feel any joy from winning. It means that he's a Jianghu swindler, said Feng Yihan very directly. The unspoken implication was that this calamity was over. When did Yi Hongi's martial arts become so powerful? This consort's Gu worms can't even get close to his body, said Duan Zitong worriedly. Moen, it's better if you don't come. Logically speaking, the wealthier a person was, the more they were afraid of death. With King Lolan's wealth, it was completely reasonable for him to cry his heart out right now. However, at this moment, King Lulan truly hoped that Yarrow Moen wouldn't come. King Lulan and Yarrow Moen have such deep feelings for each other. Ihan is envious. Feng Yihan looked towards King Lulan with a gratified expression. This old man feels that if Yarrow Moen doesn't come, we still have a chance of survival. If she comes, then we'll have reached the end of our lives. King Lolan's words caused everyone to lower their heads in silence. The autumn wind blew and the leaves rustled. Occasionally, the cries of insects would break the silence of the forest. In the depths of the forest, a bonfire crackled. As the flames flickered, two figures sat facing each other. It was as if they were in the middle of a painting. On the other side of the bonfire, Han Genie was dressed in a long black robe. His black hair fell to his chest like satin. As the wind blew past, the bangs in front of his forehead rippled with an admirable sense of steadiness and vicissitudes. When Yarrow Moen first saw Han Genie, she felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. It was true that he wasn't as beautiful as Yang Nansheng, but Han Genie's inner appeal was something that Yang Nansheng wouldn't be able to catch up to even if he cultivated for a lifetime. Master Qiao is willing to let Honorable Lord come back to find Moen? Yarrow Moen flipped the wild rabbit on the bonfire and asked casually. This Honorable Lord is bringing him to eat and conveniently left him at the dining area, replied Han Genie indifferently. Then he picked up the roasted rabbit and sat down next to Yarrow Moen. Left? Where? Yarrow Moen felt that with Master Qiao's cute appearance, no matter which family it was, they would be very happy to take him in. In a brothel in Great Shu's capital. Han Genie spoke lightly, but it caused Yarrow Moen to be flabbergasted. Then isn't Master Qiao in danger? He won't. Han Genie said confidently. That's true, Master Qiao's martial arts aren't just an ordinary level. Yarrow Moen let out a breath and felt that her worries were groundless. This Honorable Lord has sealed his acupuncture points, so he has no way of using martial arts. However, he always hides all kinds of poisons on his body, so it'll be hard for others to bully him. Han Genie thought. Then where does Honorable Lord think the poisons on Moen's body come from? Yarrow Moen wiped at her sweat, her tongue slightly curled. Han Genie suddenly stared blankly and her clear eyes turned towards Yarrow Moen in shock. Seeing Yarrow Moen nod, Han Genie suddenly felt dizzy and the miserable scene of Master Qiao being pressed down on the bed by someone appeared in front of his eyes. In 5 days, Yarrow Moen and Han Genie finally arrived at the town at the foot of Qingfeng Mountain. Originally, Yarrow Moen didn't want Han Genie to accompany them, but in view of the fact that she had almost died in the hands of that tigress, Yarrow Moen felt that when it wasn't time to show off, she absolutely shouldn't force herself. Inside the room of the inn, Yarrow Moen and Han Genie circled around the map of Qingfeng Mountain and studied it for about 2 hours. Actually, this Honorable Lord wants to know, if this Honorable Lord doesn't come, how are you going to save them? After Han Genie finished looking at the map, she had this question. Even if Honorable Lord Han comes, Moen will still be relying on this. Yarrow Moen pointed at her cherry lips and then put away the map. Relying on your mouth? Han Genie lifted her brows and looked towards Yarrow Moen. What? Honorable Lord doesn't believe me? Tomorrow, Moen will go up the mountain alone. Honorable Lord, just wait here to receive Feng Yihan and the others. Yarrow Moen's expression was filled with confidence. Are you joking? Han Genie expressed his doubt. Of course not, Moen is serious. Honorable Lord, don't worry, Moen naturally has a way to make Yi Hongyi release the 4 of them. Yarrow Moen's heart wasn't as full of confidence as her face showed, but now that things had gotten to this point, she could only stake everything on this one throw. First, when she received the letter that day, it was already too late to ask for help from each country. Second, she could ask Chu Morbei, but if her actions were too big and were discovered by Yi Hongyi, it would be very hard to guarantee that Yi Hongyi wouldn't kill Feng Yihan and the others. Therefore, Yarrow Moen only had this method left. Duan Zitong's words caused Di Feng's heart to tremble. He immediately pulled Duan Zitong behind him. Di Feng appreciates princesses' good intentions. Di Feng has never been someone who is greedy for life and afraid of death. I definitely won't let this kind of lowly person think that I am inferior. Di Feng was grateful to Duan Zitong. She said that it was just a moment of impulse. Di Feng also remembered it. At this moment, and Vermilion Bird had already opened the prison door. Di Feng walked out of the iron bars. Kill me if you want. If this daddy makes a sound, then I'll change my surname to yours. Di Feng looked towards Yi Hongyi coldly. His pitch-black eyes were like the whirlpools of the deep sea at midnight, forcing people to not dare to look directly at him. Someone, bring out the Black Panther. Seemingly intimidated by Di Feng's gaze, Yi Hongyi actually didn't dare to look him in the eye. He only ordered someone to bring out a tamed panther. Di Feng, no matter how hard your bones are, can they be harder than us, this Black Panther? Let it go. Bite. Yi Hongyi gave the order. The panther tamer made a strange sound. Immediately after, the Black Panther changed from its previously docile appearance to a savage gaze. It spat out its fangs, its front paws prostrated on the ground, and its hind legs arched. Di Feng choked and fine beads of sweat gradually seeped out of his forehead. It was true that he wasn't afraid of death, but he still had requirements for the way he died. If he was torn to shreds by the panther, then that would be too miserable. Just as Di Feng was hesitating, the Black Panther suddenly pounced over at the speed of an arrow. Di Feng didn't have time to think and immediately stretched out his hand to block it. Di Feng's two hands fiercely twisted the Black Panther's fangs. Just as the man and the beast were about to fight to the death, the Black Panther suddenly let out a miserable shriek and fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Chapter 505. Forget about Yi Hongyi, even Di Feng himself felt that it was inconceivable. It's a Gu worm. When Yi Hongyi walked forward, he discovered that a red worm was slowly crawling out of the Black Panther's stomach. Preposterous. Yi Hongyi's eyes were sharp as he walked forward and waved his sleeve. The Black Panther and the Gu worm on its body were instantly charred. Princess Hanyu saved Di Feng's life. Di Feng will definitely return the favor in my next life. Di Feng calmed himself down and cupped his hands towards Duan Zitong. Yi Hongyi, if you dare touch a single hair on Emperor Xia's head, my Lulan will definitely use all the power of the country to avenge him. King Lulan hadn't expected Yi Hongyi to be so deranged and immediately rebuked him. King Chu, enough is enough. You should always leave a path of retreat for yourself, said Feng Yi coldly. We don't need a path of retreat, nor do we fear Lulan. Come, load the crossbow. We want to see if Princess Hanyue's Gu worm can control anything. Yi Hongyi's eyes were bloodshot as he roared in a low voice. In reality, although Duan Zitong couldn't control the crossbow, she could control the person who used it. Unfortunately, the Gu worm on her body was gone. In Wanna's heart, Your Majesty has always kept your word. Now it seems that Wanna was wrong. The clear and gentle voice was melodious and beautiful. Yi Hongyi trembled when he heard it. The longing that had been pent up in his heart surged out like the ocean, drowning his heart. Wanna. Yi Hongyi turned around in shock, his eyes misty. He vaguely remembered Yarrow Moen's coldness that night. That pair of eyes was like a sharp awl that pierced his heart, making him forget to breathe. He had resented, hated, but in the end, his heart was still filled with endless longing. It turned out that regardless of whether Yarrow Moen was an idiot or not, regardless of what she had done wrong to him, Yi Hongyi already loved her to the point of being unable to extricate himself. Yarrow Moen, are you stupid? Who told you to come? The moment he saw Yarrow Moen, Di Feng fiercely cursed. Moen, you shouldn't have come. Feng Yihan's heart tightened, his brows tightly knitted. You silly girl, you're just throwing your life away if you come. The four of us just happened to make up a table, so you're extra. King Lulan shook his head, but he was full of praise for Yarrow Moen. She was loyal, a heroine among women. Sis. Little sister Moen, what can you change even if you come? This is what Zitong didn't want to see the most. Duan Zitong looked towards Yarrow Moen with heartache, her eyes misty. If he were to die in the hands of the same person in both of his lives, how helpless would that be? All of you shut up. Yarrow Moen, are you wrong? Do you have any? Yi Hongyi roared viciously and strode in front of Yarrow Moen, his hands fiercely grabbing Yarrow Moen's snow-white neck. Moen was wrong. Yarrow Moen knew very well when to be stubborn and when to bend the knee. Yarrow Moen's reply surpassed Yi Hongyi's expectations. He had originally thought that Yarrow Moen would insist on getting revenge for her sister, that it was only right and proper. Thus, Yi Hongyi no longer had any reason to exert any more strength and slowly let go. You're wrong. You know you were wrong. Yi Hongyi looked towards Yarrow Moen blankly. That face was as beautiful as ever. He vaguely remembered that night at Yarrow Fu. Such a beautiful woman had walked into his heart with a single glance. Perhaps from that moment on, he had fallen in love with this woman who looked foolish but was like a fairy. That's right, Moen was wrong. If I had known earlier that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, Moen should have let you guys stay in Great Shu. Yarrow Moen shrugged and said in annoyance. Yarrow Moen. Yi Hongyi shouted loudly. Your Majesty, please calm your anger, Moen was only speaking the truth. Now that WNR has returned, should your Majesty allow you guys to leave Qingfeng Mountain? If it was said that Yarrow Moen had been apprehensive before coming to Qingfeng Mountain, then now, Yarrow Moen found confidence in Yi Hongyi's eyes. She believed that Yi Hongyi definitely wouldn't kill her. Dream on. If they go back, how could they let Great Chu off? Yi Hongyi snorted coldly, a cold light flashing through his eyes. Almost at the same time, Yarrow Moen abruptly moved, placing the dagger she had prepared a long time ago against her own neck. If it wasn't for WNR, they wouldn't have encountered this disaster. If they die, WNR will naturally pay with her life. Yarrow Moen pressed the dagger against her snowy neck, her eyes cold and emotionless. Yarrow Moen, do you think you're still the woman at the apex of Zhen's heart? If you want to die, Zhen won't stop you. Zhen also won't let them go for your sake. Yi Hongyi looked towards Yarrow Moen angrily, his eyes as cold as ice. Is that so? Since your Majesty doesn't care about Moen, then why did you take the risk to imprison 3 countries' monarchs and a country's princess? Your Majesty didn't hesitate to incur public anger to have Moen come back. Could it be that you just want Moen to die in front of you? Fine, Moen will fulfill your Majesty's wish. Yarrow Moen's eyes abruptly turned cold and her jade wrist suddenly tightened. Stop. When Yi Hongyi saw the blood trickling down Yarrow Moen's snowy neck, he shouted loudly and snatched the dagger from Yarrow Moen's hand. Your Majesty agreed to let them go? Yarrow Moen's shapely brows knitted as she looked towards Yi Hongyi coldly. In reality, even if it was a ruse of injuring herself to gain sympathy, Yarrow Moen still didn't want to harm herself in front of Yi Hongyi. So before coming, Yarrow Moen had specially used a technique she had learned from Lung Bingxin to make a skin bag filled with chicken blood and placed it on her neck. Although her disguise was very crude, with the chicken blood as a cover, she could still muddle through. Impossible. Yarrow Moen, don't go too far. Do you really think Zhen can't bear to part with you? Yi Hongyi said one thing but meant another. Other than being unwilling to part with her, what other reason did he have to see Yarrow Moen? What other reason did he have to stop her from harming herself? Actually, WNR is also very curious. After your Majesty finds out the truth, will you treat WNR the same way you treat eldest sister? In the end, were those undying vows your Majesty made back then real or fake? Before Yi Hongyi could react, Yarrow Moen unexpectedly took out a dagger from her sleeve and pressed it against her own neck. Dark red blood fell to the ground like a red spider lily blooming in hell, causing Yi Hongyi's heart to ache. Yarrow Moen, stop. Inside the prison cell, Feng Yihan roared loudly. His heart was in unimaginable pain. Chapter 506. Your Majesty, I'm sorry. WNR didn't know that your Majesty cared about WNR so much. I'm sorry. WNR promised your Majesty to write a contract with them to write off this matter and then beg them to help your Majesty. However, WNR begs your Majesty not to kill Yi Junqing. After all, he only rebelled for eldest sister, alright? Yarrow Moen cried pitifully. Time seemed to rewind. Yi Hongyi suddenly felt that the Yarrow Moen in front of him was still that foolish child from back then. She had never changed. Your Majesty. Yi Hongyi stopped Chuyu when he opened his mouth again. Prepare paper and ink. If they're willing to sign a non-aggression treaty and swear not to support Yi Junqing, we'll let them live. Yi Hongyi's heart finally softened. In Yi Hongyi's embrace, Yarrow Moen's heart that had been suspended in the air slowly landed. Her misty eyes looked towards Yi Hongyi with tenderness like water. In front of love, those who lose their heads may not necessarily be women, Yarrow Moen thought. After the 5 countries' letters were signed, Yarrow Moen walked over to the 4 people and bowed in greeting. WN and Your Majesty had some misunderstandings before. Now that the misunderstanding has been resolved, WN has a presumptuous request. I hope that after you leave, you can help Your Majesty attack Yi Junqing, begged Yarrow Moen in a gentle voice. If it wasn't for the Empress of Chu, Yihan would rather die than compromise with King Chu. After this, Qi will no longer interfere in Chu's internal conflicts. Farewell. Feng Yihan's face was as cold as ice as he glanced at Yi Hongyi coldly before turning to leave. King Lulan, Duan Zitong, and Di Feng also walked out of the cave. At the side, Yarrow Moen and the others were just about to follow them out when Yarrow Moen stopped them. Your Majesty, you wouldn't have Chu Moen secretly kill Feng Yihan and the others, right? Yarrow Moen immediately saw through Chu Moen's intentions and looked towards Yi Hongyi with tears in her eyes. Chu Moen, pass on our decree. Let them leave Green Summit Mountain safely. If anyone resists, their entire family will be exterminated, ordered Yi Hongyi sternly. Chu Moen was unwilling but still left. Once Chu Moen and the others left, only Yarrow Moen and Yi Hongyi were left in the cave. The atmosphere gradually became ambiguous. Your Majesty, WN is guilty, please punish me. Yarrow Mo Wan felt that in a situation where she had absolutely no chance of winning, if she stubbornly straightened her neck, she would only end up getting chopped. In the face of life and death, moral integrity really wasn't worth a fart. Moreover, her current groveling was only one of the ways she was seeking to save herself. It did not mean that there was something wrong with her character. You don't hate Shen? The words from that night still rang in his ears. Yi Hongyi walked towards Yarrow Mo Wan step by step, but he didn't extend his hand to help her up. Hate. Moen has hated Your Majesty ever since she found out the truth behind eldest sister's death. Eldest sister treated Wanna so well. If I don't get revenge for eldest sister, how can Wanna deserve to live in this world? Yarrow Moen knelt on the ground and buried her head between her knees. Her voice was very low, but it was very clear. Since that's the case, then why kneel before me? Yi Hongyi smiled bitterly. The heavens really loved to tease people. Of these sisters of the same father and mother, he hated one to the core, but also loved the other to the core. Because Wanna has held on to her hatred for so long, she has never truly understood Your Majesty. In Wanna's heart, Your Majesty even wanted to kill someone as good as eldest sister, so how could he possibly be sincere towards Wanna? But now, Wanna knows that she was wrong. Yarrow Mo Wan's tears silently fell, closing the chicken blood on her neck and soaking her clothes. Why do you know that you were wrong? Yi Hongyi was unable to watch Yarrow Mo Wan's snow-white neck bleed and remain indifferent. He tore off the robe he was wearing and slowly knelt on the ground. Does Your Majesty believe me? Wanna made this trip with the determination to die. In Wanna's opinion, no matter what, Your Majesty wouldn't let Feng Yihan and the others go for Wanna. So Wanna brought a dagger. Since I can't save them, I might as well give them my life, but... Yarrow Mo Wan raised her eyes, sparkling and translucent, and subconsciously took a corner of the robe from Yi Hongyi's hands. If she let Yi Hongyi bandage her wound, it would be hard to avoid giving herself away, Yarrow Mo Wan thought. But what? Yi Hongyi looked at the lovely person in front of him with heartache, unwilling to shift his gaze. But Wanna didn't expect that Your Majesty would actually be willing to let them go, just for Wanna. How could Wanna not be moved by this? How could she not reflect on herself? It's true that no one can change eldest sister's death, but Your Majesty's heart towards Wanna is also true. Yarrow Mo Wan hastily wrapped a corner of the robe around her neck, then looked towards Yi Hongyi emotionally. So Wanna is willing to return to the palace with us? Yi Hongyi lightly pulled Yarrow Mo Wan into his arms. When he raised his head slightly, a tear slid down and landed on Yarrow Mo Wan's cheek. If it wasn't for the fact that Wu Ming didn't act according to the plan Yi Hongyi had arranged beforehand, Yarrow Mo Wan really would have thought that Yi Hongyi was stupid to the extreme. So when Yarrow Moen saw King Lulan, Feng Yihan, Di Feng, Duan Zitong, and Han Jini locked up in the 5 prison carriages made of profound iron, she suddenly felt that she had been too conceited. How could she ask a wolf to reject meat just because he had fallen in love with sheep? How could a narrow-minded beast like Yi Hongyi be willing to be lenient just because of her words? Wu Ming kowtows in salute to your majesty. When Wu Ming appeared in front of the carriage with a complacent expression, Yarrow Mo Wn knew that her plan had failed. Why are you here? Yi Hongyi's brows were tightly furrowed, his voice filled with unconcealable anger. Wu Ming has already imprisoned Feng Yihan and the others in the carriage. Your Majesty, please take a look. Wu Ming ignored Yi Hongyi's suspicions. He only wanted to see shock and anger in Yarrow Mo Wan's eyes. Your Majesty is lying to Wanna. The moment the carriage curtain was lifted, Yarrow Mo Wan's heart went cold. She saw that Feng Yihan and the others were all imprisoned. Their bodies were weak and powerless, clearly affected by bone-softening powder. We can't let them leave. Otherwise, Great Chu will be in danger. Wanna, don't worry about this. Yi Hongyi's face was indistinguishable from purple as he spoke guiltily. So your Majesty was putting on a show for Wanna. It was Wanna who was too naive, extremely stupid. Yarrow Mo Wan's tears flowed. As she spoke, she was about to jump off the carriage when Yi Hongyi sealed her acupuncture point. Your Majesty, Wu Ming will deal with them right away. Seeing Yarrow Mo Wan's cold eyes, Wu Ming's lips curved in a cold smile. If your Majesty dares to touch the 5 of them, Moan will definitely bite her tongue to commit suicide. In any case, your Majesty doesn't care about Moan's life or death, so let this dog kill them. Yarrow Mo Wn glared at Yi Hongyi and shouted resolutely. Your Majesty, don't listen to this witch's nonsense. She's willing to die. Wu Ming will deal with those 5 people right away. Wu Ming said mockingly, his eyes full of pride. Wait, we've decided to bring them back to the Imperial Palace. If the 5 countries come to invade, they might still be of use. Yi Hongyi hesitated for a moment before coldly ordering. Your Majesty, a long night is fraught with dreams. They can't be left alive. Wu Ming was stunned when he heard this. There's no need to say any more, we've already made up our mind. Yi Hongyi admitted that he was mainly considering Yarrow Mo Wan's feelings on this matter. Of course, he also wanted to leave a way out for Great Chu. Forgive Wu Ming for being unable to comply, but the 5 of them must be killed. Wu Ming hadn't expected that Yi Hongyi would change his mind. He had originally wanted to kill the 5 people and then shift the blame onto Great Chu. After all, up until now, no one knew that they had fallen into Yi Hongyi's hands. However, if they were left alive, things would be hard to say. Once the news got out, not only would the 5 countries' armies not be drawn to Great Chu, they would be drawn to Great Chu instead. If that happened, what chaos would there be? The armies of the 5 countries would be on the same side as Yi Junqing. Yi Hongyi would be annihilated 1,000 times over. Wu Ming, you disobeyed the imperial edict. You have ulterior motives. No wonder you let Yi Junqing go last time. It turns out you had intentions of defecting to the enemy from the start. Yarrow Mo Wan angrily rebuked. Your Majesty, don't listen to this witch's nonsense. Wu Ming is loyal to Great Chu. Wu Ming glared at Yarrow Mo Wan, then turned to look at Yi Hongyi. However, Yi Hongyi's expression was steely and his eyes were cold. Chapter 507. Wu Ming, Zhen knows you're the captain of the Iron Blood Corps and also knows the status of the Iron Blood Corps in Great Chu. But remember, Zhen is the ruler of a country. Right now, Zhen orders you to bring the 5 of them safely to the Imperial Palace. Do you understand? Yi Hongyi's words were as cold as ice, especially the light in his eyes that were like sharp arrows. Wu Ming originally wanted to persist, but when he thought that if he continued to confront Yi Hongyi, it was very likely that he would anger Yi Hongyi. Seeing as it wasn't the time to shed all pretense of cordiality with Yi Hongyi, he suppressed his anger and agreed. It was at least a 5-day journey from Qingfeng Mountain to Chu Palace. In order to not attract too much attention, Wu Ming sealed the acupuncture points of Feng Yihan and the others, drugged them with bone-softening powder and then thrown them into the same carriage. Because they chose to avoid the bustling market, they mainly ate wild rabbit and snake meat. It was already late at night and there were 2 bonfires in the forest. Even though Yarrow Mo Wan was extremely unwilling, Yi Hongyi still pulled Yarrow Mo Wan to his side. As for Wu Ming and the others, They gathered around the other bonfire and threw the cooked food into the hands of Han Genie and the others who were tied up. Are you still blaming Jin? Seeing Yarrow Mo Wan lower her eyes and not say anything, Yi Hongyi felt very uncomfortable. Wan doesn't dare and has no reason to blame your majesty. Yarrow Mo Wan spoke indifferently, but in her heart, she was thinking about how to save Han Genie and the others. On the way, Yarrow Mo Wan secretly noticed that other than Wu Ming, who was an expert, the rest were Imperial guards. As long as they removed the bone softening powder from Han Genie and the others, they would have a high chance of winning. Right now, the most important thing was to think of a way to get the antidote for the bone softening powder on Wu Ming's body. Then it's still Jin's fault. It's not that Jin has to detain them and not let them go. Have you ever thought that if we let them go, once they return, they will definitely send troops to attack Jin? It wasn't that Yi Hongyi didn't suspect that Yarrow Mo Wan was pretending to surrender, but he was more willing to give Yarrow Mo Wan one last chance. They won't. We have their signed credentials in our hands. They are all monarchs of a country, they won't go back on their words. Yarrow Mo Wan looked up blankly and refuted. A credentials without the imperial seal is just a piece of waste paper in Jin's eyes. In their eyes, it's the same, Yi Hongyi explained. Then your majesty, why did you put on such an act in the cave? Yarrow Moan glanced at Nameless out of the corner of her eye and discovered that Nameless was glaring at her. If his eyes were big enough, Yarrow Moan really suspected that his eyeballs would roll out. As a result, Yarrow Moan's lips curled up as she thought of a plan. Because I care about you. Even if that ## said such cruel words before she left, we are still willing to give you a chance. Moan, the matter between us and your older sister isn't what you think it is. Don't listen to Yarrow Sulwan's lies either. She's just jealous that we dote on you and love you, so she's using Yarrow Morshin's death to slander us. Regardless of whether others believe it or not, we hope that you won't be fooled by those rumors. Actually, your older sister and Yi Junqing aren't innocent. That child isn't Jin's either. The reason Jin didn't explain it to the world was because I wanted to leave your older sister some dignity, understand? Yi Hongyi gently caressed Yarrow Moan's hair as he spoke in a gentle voice. She didn't know if it was because he was used to it, but the current Yi Hongyi was still treating Yarrow Moan as the foolish child from back then. He was telling the crudest lies in an attempt to muddle his way through. Really? Yarrow Moan followed the strength of Yi Hongyi's hand and slowly leaned against his chest. Ripples of ice appeared in her deep eyes as the hatred in her heart surged and filled every cell in her body. Yarrow Moan suddenly thought that if she was a demoness, she would definitely reach her hand into Yi Hongyi's chest and pull out his heart to see what kind of black blood flowed out. Don't betray us anymore. In this world, there's no one who would treat you as well as we do. For you, we don't care about being called an incapable ruler. For you, we don't care about the country of Great Chu. We only love one woman in this life, and that's you. Yi Hongyi's arms around Yarrow Moan's waist tightened. He rested his chin on Yarrow Moan's snow-white shoulder as he said the most moving words of love in the world. However, in Yarrow Moan's ears, they sounded like the world's biggest joke. Because of Yarrow Moan's insistence, Yi Hongyi slept in the tent that had already been set up while Yarrow Moan stayed in the carriage. When night fell, Nameless assigned the Imperial Guards to stand guard at night while he himself stood guard next to Han Genie and the others' carriage, not daring to relax for even a moment. Master! A faint voice like that of a mosquito rang out. Yarrow Moan had originally been a light sleeper. When she heard the voice, she instantly got up. Seeing that Yu was right in front of her, Yarrow Moan's eyes brimmed with tears of excitement. Why have you come? Yarrow Moan did her best to keep her voice low in fear of startling Nameless and the Imperial Guards. As Master's hidden guards, we've already failed in our duties. Master, Fenglin, and the others are nearby. We'll help you out. Yu moved to help Yarrow Moan up as she spoke. That won't do. Han Genie and the others have been poisoned by bone softening powder. If we really fight, we have no chance of victory. Yu think of a way to get some knockout medicine. This consort naturally has a way to obtain the antidote. Even without Yu Yarrow Moan had already thought of a way to deal with Nameless. Now that she had Yuer's help, she was full of confidence. Once Yuer left, Yarrow Moen couldn't sleep anymore. The appearance of the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning caused Yarrow Moen to be half happy and half worried. She was happy that with their help, her chances of victory had increased slightly. She was worried that their departure wouldn't attract Yi Juanqing's attention. What she didn't want to see the most was Yi Juanqing putting himself in danger again because of her. As he thought about this, dawn came. Yuer's work efficiency wasn't just high. Around dawn, Yarrow Moen had already hidden the knockout medicine that she had Yuer prepare in her sleeves. After an entire day's journey, the two carriages still hadn't left this forest. It wasn't until around 5 in the evening that Yi Hongyi and the others could only sleep in the open like last night. Your Majesty, drink some water. Next to the bonfire, Yarrow Moen didn't miss the opportunity to bring the water to Yi Hongyi with a sweet smile. Yi Hongyi looked towards Yarrow Moen meaningfully. After hesitating for a long while, he accepted the porcelain bowl and drained it in one gulp. Your Majesty, and Commandant Nameless have a deep misunderstanding. Since has chosen to return to Your Majesty's side, there are some misunderstandings that can't be resolved. Wishes to use water in place of wine to toast Commandant Nameless. Is that all right? Yarrow Moen blinked her clear eyes. Her innocent gaze caused Yi Hongyi to tremble. This was the he loved the most, he loved the most. When Yarrow Moen walked up to Nameless, Nameless really didn't even want to look at her. Commandant Nameless isn't willing to give this consort this face. Yarrow Moen handed the water to Nameless. Her cherry lips curved into a cold smile and her eyes flickered with cold light. Yarrow Moen, don't think that this commandant can't do anything to you. This commandant definitely won't let the matter of Great Shu go. Whenever he thought about how Yarrow Moen had cut off his belt, Nameless felt that his brilliance in this life had been ruined by Yarrow Moen. How do you know that Moen won't let the matter go? A straightforward person doesn't resort to insinuations. Yi Hongyi is over there and both you and I have our reasons to fear him. So, Commandant Daran has to act even if you don't want to. The porcelain bowl in Yarrow Moen's hand moved closer. Nameless refused. John Doe, who are you trying to fool with that arrogant look of yours? Do you believe that if you still don't accept it, this consort will pounce on you right now and say that you're taking liberties with this consort? Yarrow Moen lifted her brows and threatened. You don't know shame. Nameless glared hatefully at Yarrow Moen. Shame? This consort only said it casually and you don't know shame? Then Moen dares to ask Lord Nameless, which of the things that you've done are shameless? Yarrow Moen rolled her eyes at Nameless for free, causing Nameless to seethe with anger. Yarrow Moen, this old man can drink this water, but don't blame this old man for not warning you. This time, if you dare to take one wrong step, you'll definitely be consigned to eternal damnation. Nameless angrily accepted the porcelain bowl and drank it clean. Chapter 508. Nameless had the most aphrodisiac in his bowl, so the second he drank it, Nameless felt the world spin around him. Even Yarrow Moen, who was right next to him, couldn't see clearly. Nameless, you should thank this consort for not putting arsenic in the water. When Yarrow Moen bent over to take the bowl, she grabbed the antidote from Nameless' belt. Then she helped the unconscious Nameless lean against the side of the carriage. Many thanks, Master Commandant. Yarrow Moen took the bowl and glanced at Yi Hongyi, who had his back to her. She then walked around the carriage to enter. Without Master Commandant's permission, no one is allowed to approach the carriage. The Imperial Guard immediately stopped Yarrow Moen. Are you deaf? Just now, Master Nameless already allowed this consort to visit Princess Hanyu. You dare to stop this consort? Yarrow Moen looked towards the guard. Although her voice was low, it didn't diminish in the slightest. Hey! This subordinate doesn't dare, it's just that. In front of Yarrow Moen, even the all-powerful Yi Juanqing felt inferior, let alone a mere Imperial Guard. If you don't believe me, you can go ask Nameless. If you still don't believe me, you can go ask His Majesty. However, based on your questioning of this consort, This consort's sentence of exterminating your entire family would be a light sentence. Yarrow Moen snorted coldly as she looked towards the guard. When the guard heard this, he immediately retreated to the side. Yarrow Moen hadn't been able to find a chance to see Han Genie and the others ever since they left Green Summit Mountain. Now that she entered the carriage, Yarrow Moen's tears flowed down. She saw that Han Genie, Feng Yihan, and the others were all exhausted and didn't even have the strength to sit. Moen has let everyone down. Moen will definitely return this favor in the future. As Yarrow Moen spoke, she fed Han Genie and the others the antidote. There's no need to say anything in the future. Once we escape, you have to treat us to a good meal, we're so hungry. After Han Genie ate the antidote, he felt a bit better, so he stated his conditions very realistically. Of course, there's enough brown rice porridge. Yi Hongyi and Nameless have already been taken care of by Moen. The remaining Imperial Guards are nothing to be afraid of. In a bit, we can't keep fighting, let's escape first. Yarrow Moen fed the last antidote to Duan Zitong, then turned around and walked to the front of the carriage. She glanced sideways at Han Genie, Feng Yihan, and Di Feng. Don't worry, I've more or less recovered. Han Genie saw the inquiry in Yarrow Moen's gaze and nodded slightly. Yarrow Moen was speechless. She took a deep breath and then lifted the curtain. However, at this moment, her entire body froze in front of the carriage. She suddenly felt as if the crows above her head were forming a one and then a person as they slowly flew past. 10,000 grass mud horses were galloping wildly in her heart. Yarrow Mo Wn. Wu Ming has already warned you. One dangerous step and you will be doomed eternally. In front of the carriage, Wu Ming's ferocious face wore the most wretched and creepy smile in the world. In front of Nameless, Yi Hongyi's eyes were like whirlpools in the middle of an ocean at midnight, deep and gloomy, absolutely terrifying. We want to know, the things you said these past few days, were they all just an act? Yi Hongyi stood in front of the carriage with his hands clasped behind his back, coldly staring at Yarrow Moen, who was at the very front of the carriage. Your Majesty wouldn't take it seriously, right? As matters stood, no matter how glib her tongue was, it was impossible for Yi Hongyi to believe that she had only come to this carriage as a passerby. Why? Why do you have to treat us like this? We have even forgiven all of your betrayals, we only want to treat you like before. But why do you still mix around with them? In your heart, are they more important than us? Under the moonlight, Yi Hongyi's face was like a ghost, filled with killing intent. No, in this world, there is no one who can compare to the position your Majesty holds in Moen's heart. Because even if all the waters of the Eastern Sea and the shores of the Western Sea were used up, it still wouldn't be able to wash away the hatred in Moen's heart. Yi Hongyi, do you know how much Yarrow Morshin holds in Moen's heart? Do you know how much Zhong'e holds in Moen's heart? If I don't personally kill you in front of eldest sister's grave, Moen truly wouldn't be able to die in peace. Since things had already reached this point, Yarrow Moen really had no reason to feign civility with Yi Hongyi. We've been husband and wife for 2 years, we treat you like a pearl and a treasure, could it be that you're still indifferent to all of this? Yi Hongyi's voice was trembling, his eyes shooting out a dark green light. I do. Towards His Majesty's pampering, Moen only felt disgusted. Every time His Majesty smiles at Moen, do you know what Moen is thinking? Moen really wants to slap His Majesty so hard that he spins like a spinning top. The truth hurt people, but Yarrow Moen's truth hurt even more. Yarrow Moen, you deserve to die. Yi Hongyi's fists cracked, veins popped out on his forehead and his eyes bulged like a frog's. Your Majesty, Wu Ming will capture Yarrow Moen and bring her over for you to deal with. When Wu Ming saw the killing intent in Yi Hongyi's eyes, he was overjoyed. Although there were orders from above not to harm Yarrow Moen's life, he couldn't kill her, but that didn't mean Yi Hongyi couldn't kill her. Seeing Wu Ming charge towards the carriage, Han Genie abruptly pulled Yarrow Moen over and attacked Wu Ming with his palm. However, what Yarrow Moen never expected was that the instant they clashed, Han Genie's body fell into the carriage like a fallen leaf swept away by the wind, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Yarrow Moen, do you really think that this master military officer's martial arts are so bad that I couldn't even hear when someone contacted you? Since your Majesty and this master military officer didn't faint, then the antidote is naturally fake. Ha! Even with all your schemes, it's only this much. Yarrow Moen. Don't blame this master military officer, it's you who doesn't know what's good for you. Wu Ming's eyes were dark and cold. He suddenly jumped onto the carriage and reached out to grab Yarrow Moen. Practically at the same time, several cold lights shot towards Wu Ming. Wu Ming had no choice but to retreat several steps. When he raised his eyes, wind, rain, thunder, and lightning had already separated to the four corners of the carriage. Master. This subordinate came late and startled Master. Feng Lin's voice was deep and cold as he shouted solemnly. Wu Ming's martial arts are unfathomable, you guys be careful. Inside the carriage, Yarrow Moen held Han Genie in her arms and warned worriedly. With just the four of you, you're still not this master military officer's match. Wu Ming was conceited as he looked at the four people in front of him. His eyes flashed and he immediately rushed forward with his palm. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning didn't dare to be careless and each used their special skills. Their weapons clashed and sparks flew everywhere. The forest instantly became as bright as day and the ear-piercing sound of friction hurt Yarrow Moen's eardrums. After more than 10 moves, wind, rain, thunder, and lightning were all injured to varying degrees by Wu Ming's palm. Seeing that wind, rain, thunder, and lightning couldn't do anything, Yarrow Moen's eyes gradually became worried. Opposite her, Yi Hongyi's gaze never left Yarrow Moen. The hatred in his heart was hard to quench. He couldn't accept this. Yarrow Moen was the only woman he had ever loved in this life. Yi Hongyi couldn't accept this kind of result no matter what. Master, drive the carriage and leave first. In the air, Feng Lin shouted loudly. He had already decided that even if he had to risk his life, he would protect Master and leave. Yarrow Moen wasn't a heartless person. If it weren't for the fact that Feng Yihan and the others were still in the carriage, Yarrow Moen wouldn't have left wind, rain, thunder, and lightning behind no matter what. But right now, she had no other choice. When Yarrow Moen heard this, she leaped to the front of the carriage and pulled on the reins with both hands. However, Imperial guards had already rushed forward and cut the reins. The horse ran off and the front of the carriage instantly fell to the ground. Yarrow Moen lost her balance and fell down. When she saw that she was going to hit the ground head first, Yarrow Moen simply closed her eyes. However, in the next second, a familiar scent entered her nose. Yarrow Moen didn't want to open her eyes. She was afraid of seeing the person she missed so much but didn't want to see. However, she couldn't refuse this kind of warm embrace. She really wanted to stay here for the rest of her life and never leave. Yi Junqing, you actually still dare to appear in front of us. The moment Yarrow Moen fell, Yi Hongyi couldn't help but rush forward. In that instant, Yi Hongyi knew that no matter how ruthless Yarrow Moen's heart was, he wouldn't be able to let go of this woman. However, before he could act, someone else beat him to it. Chapter 509. Moen, are you alright? In this 1 month, all words were useless. Not a single word could describe how much he longed for Yarrow Moen. He had never felt this kind of burning sensation before. This was also the result of this 1 month. He knew that the woman in his arms was the true love of his life. No one could surpass her, no one could replace her. Even the Yarrow Morshin from back then hadn't made him feel this way. When he had told Yang Nanxing about this feeling, Yang Nanxing had thought about it for a long time. In the end, he had told him that he liked the new and hated the old. However, even though he felt guilty, he couldn't suppress his longing for Yarrow Moen. I'm fine. Yarrow Moen resisted the urge to hug Yi Junqing's neck and cry. She silently retreated from Yi Junqing's embrace and walked towards the carriage with difficulty to help Han Genie up. At this moment, Han Genie wanted to cry. He had shaken heaven and earth for over a decade, but he had never been so cowardly. Yi Hongyi, today isn't the time to fight. This prince only wants to take them away. Under the night sky, Yi Junqing's eyes were clear and emotionless. It was as if the moonlight had coated them with a layer of silver, making them seem like an immortal's residence that no one dared to profane. With us here, none of you can think of leaving. Yi Junqing, today, We will let you know the consequences of betraying us. As Yi Hongyi roared, Nameless whistled with his pinky. My Ji, Thousand Faces, Bai Zhon, and Mo Chang, who had been hiding in the shadows, appeared behind Yi Hongyi with 100 death soldiers. Since you've come, then don't leave, said Nameless coldly. Wu Ming said coldly. Now that things had come to this, if they were to rescue the rulers of the 5 countries, he would not be able to bear the consequences. Therefore, he had no other choice but to kill them all. Nameless, if you dare touch a single hair on this Alliance Head's junior brother, this Alliance Head will pluck out all the hair on your body. Listen up, not a single hair will be left. Just as Yarrow Moen was in shock, a figure in red descended from the sky and landed lightly by Yi Juanqing's side. Behind her were over 10 martial arts experts. Yang Nansheng, although you're the Alliance Head of the martial arts world, your martial arts aren't worthy of this captain's attention, said Nameless coldly. County Commandant, my Ji requests to go to battle. We will definitely capture Yang Nansheng alive. The moment she saw Yang Nansheng, my Ji's eyes brightened. Her sharp eyes stared at Yang Nansheng fiercely. Her gaze made Yang Nansheng's stomach churn, and the taste of chicken overflowed. Nameless kid, since you dare to capture my master, Grandpa Qiao will let you know why flowers are so red today. As soon as my Ji finished speaking, a black shadow dashed up. When he landed, people didn't see where he was. When they looked down, they saw Qiao Jiao standing in front of the carriage with a pale face. Then, more than 10 figures landed. They were all the top experts of 10,000 Emperor City. Capturing Supreme Lord Han was purely an accident. Nameless will now return Supreme Lord Han to all of you. I hope that all of you will not participate in the internal strife of Great Chu. How about that? The moment Master Qiao appeared, Wu Ming knew his martial arts skill was not low, his heart was slightly shaken, he wanted to return Han Jinyi to avoid any conflict. When Lord Qiao heard this, he didn't say anything. He turned to look at Han Jinyi, who was resting in Yarrow Moen's embrace. Did this Supreme Lord's blood flow for nothing? Han Jinyi wiped away the blood at the corner of his lips, his voice as cold as a deep lake. Only now did Master Qiao see that Han Jinyi had suffered internal injuries. Blood instantly rushed to his head and he turned to glare angrily at Nameless. Right at this time, a muffled sound suddenly came from behind Nameless. 5 soldiers of the Iron Blood Corps died before they even had a chance to make a sound. Given Nameless' skills, if someone had thrown a hidden weapon in front of him, there was no way he wouldn't have been able to see it. So there was only one possibility. There were enemies hidden in the shadows, and they were most likely Yi Juanqing's people. Yi Juanqing, if we really fought today, Nameless might not be able to defeat you. However, Nameless can be sure that you won't be able to gain any advantage. Nameless agreed to let you take the people away, but that's all. The meaning behind his words was that they shouldn't fight. Nameless. Yi Hongyi hadn't expected that Nameless would cower and immediately shouted angrily. Nameless took a deep breath, then walked to Yi Hongyi's side and muttered a few words in a low voice. The meaning behind his words was that there were several people hidden in the shadows. If they fought, only they would suffer. Yi Hongyi calmed himself down. Only now did he notice that there seemed to be several powerful surges of internal energy surging in the shadows. He was greatly shocked. Mountains and rivers will meet again. Yi Hongyi, remember this. What you owe Morshine, Junqing will get it back for her bit by bit. Let's go. Yi Junqing was also aware of the strength of Nameless, My Ji, Thousand Faces, and the others behind him. Adding on the fact that he didn't want to settle the debt with Yi Hongyi here, he ordered Ben Lei and the others to push the carriage away. Yarrow Moen, we will give you one last chance. If you come back now, you will still be the Chu Empress, the woman at the apex of our heart. If you leave, we definitely won't forgive you the next time we meet. Yi Hongyi's footsteps loosened as he took a step forward, his eyes filled with boundless hope. King Chu, please remember this. The next time we meet, Moen will definitely take your head. Yarrow Moen looked towards Yi Hongyi coldly. That gaze was like the sharpest blade that fiercely scraped against every inch of Yi Hongyi's skin. The pain was unbearable. As he watched the carriage leave, Yi Hongyi raised his head to the sky and howled. We didn't do anything wrong. Yarrow Morshin deserves to die. We can only live if she dies. Yi Jun Qing. Yarrow Moen. We will make all of you regret this. Ah. Once Yi Hongyi and the others left, Chu Morbei walked out of the shadows and glanced meaningfully in the direction Yarrow Moen had left in. Master, Yin Xiong doesn't understand. You came all this way to save the crown princess. Why did you let her leave? Next to Chu Morbei, Yin Xiong and Soulbreaker Sanmeng both looked towards Chu Morbei in confusion. The rarest things in this world are those that can't be obtained and those that have already been lost. Since she's already the crown princess, then just treat it as if this crown prince doesn't care for her. Let's go. Chu Morbei's thin lips curved in a meaningful smile as he turned and walked in front. Behind him, Yin Xiong and Soulbreaker Sanmeng looked at each other in dismay. They both felt that their master was just trying to look impressive. If he didn't care for her, then why would he rush here without stopping even after the snake venom had been cleared? They had all seen how he had eaten and slept in the open on the way here. If this was called not caring for her, then if he cared for her, then wouldn't he be asking for her life? That's right, he didn't care about why he had run out of the room in such a hurry when he heard that Yarrow Moen had been thrown into prison. Why had his mind been filled with Yarrow Moen's infuriating smile the entire time? But how was he supposed to get out of that situation just now? He wasn't sure if Yarrow Moen would obediently follow him back to Great Shu if he opened his mouth. He had never been rejected by anyone in his life. If he was rejected by Yarrow Moen in front of so many people, then would he still be able to live in the future? His heart was in disarray like a fallen leaf in the wind, but also like a lone boat in the vast blue sea. He was hesitant and helpless. He had fallen in love, right? When he realized this, Chu Morbei began to cry. The most tragic thing in this world wasn't marrying the opponent he hated the most and giving him his heart. It was that after he gave his heart to someone else, he actually didn't dare to open his mouth. Had his, Chu Morbei's, strong self-confidence been boosted by a dog? At dawn, Yi Juanqing's group had already reached the small village outside the forest. Everyone stopped walking. Most of the bone-softening powder on Feng Yihan and the others had already dispersed. Esteemed Prince, Moen, all good things must come to an end. The reason Yihan is safe and sound is all thanks to you too. Yihan has been away from Great Qi for a long time, so I'll bid my farewells here. There are no words to express my gratitude. Yihan will naturally repay you. Feng Yihan was the first to speak. Yarrow Moen knew that the country couldn't go a day without a monarch. If Feng Yihan didn't return to Great Qi soon, there might be unforeseen events, so she ordered Feng Lin and Yu to escort him back. Di Feng also spoke up. Sirs, Di Feng will also be taking his leave first. But don't worry, as long as you two need it, Great Xia will definitely do its best. Also, if you two personally kill Yi Hongyi, don't forget to stab him a few times for this old man. That bastard dared to use a leopard to scare me. Even dying 10,000 times wouldn't be enough. As Di Feng spoke hatefully, Duan Zitong also walked over. Little sister Moen, Zitong knows that you still haven't gotten your revenge, so I won't disturb you any longer. If you need Zitong's help in the future, Zitong will definitely not disappoint you, said Duan Zitong resolutely. Lei Yiting, Dian Shan, you two escort Princess Han Yu back to the south. Although Yarrow Moen was reluctant, she knew that it wasn't good to stay in Great Chu for long. In order to prevent Yi Hongyi from not giving up, sending them away was the best plan. Little sister, there's no need to trouble yourself. Zitong doesn't want to return to the south for now. Zitong wants to go to Great Xia with Emperor Xia to feast my eyes. I wonder if Emperor Xia is willing? Duan Zitong's affectionate gaze fell on Di Feng, her cherry lips hooked into a bashful smile. Di Feng hesitated. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he really couldn't explain to old Emperor Xia if he brought a princess back for no reason. There was still half a year until the 3-year deadline. It wouldn't be good if old Emperor Xia misunderstood that he went back on his word. Seeing Di Feng's hesitation, Duan Zitong's eyes darkened slightly. Princess Han Yu is going to Great Xia on behalf of Yarrow Manifest businesses to discuss business related to rattan chairs. It wouldn't be good for Emperor Xia to refuse. right? Yarrow Moen knew what Duan Zitong was thinking, so she added fuel to the fire. Of course I won't refuse. Di Feng would be honored. Seeing that there was a way out, Di Feng immediately relented. Duan Zitong's eyes flashed and she turned to look towards Yarrow Moen with gratitude. Yarrow Moen naturally wouldn't let Di Feng and Duan Zitong travel alone, so she ordered Lei Ting and Dian Shan to accompany and protect them. Speaking of how Duan Zitong obtained the old Emperor Xia's favor and was given a marriage to Di Feng, that was a story for later. King Lulan, who hadn't spoken for a long time, thought about it for a long time and decided to go with Yi Junqing first. Afterwards, he would order the Lulan guards to bring him back. This was the safest way and Yarrow Moen was happy to do it. "WN girl, you're not going back with this old man?" King Lulan saw that Yarrow Moen was just standing there without any intention of following, so he asked in confusion. "Moen." Yarrow Moen looked towards Yi Junqing hesitantly, but didn't know what to say. King Lulan saw that the two of them seemed to have something to say, so he tactfully left. Once King Lulan walked over, Yarrow Moen was just about to say something when she heard Han Genie cough loudly from the sedan behind her. "Is Supremacy Han all right?" She knew best how Han Genie had gotten injured. Yarrow Moen had no reason to abandon Han Genie and leave right now. Furthermore, she didn't want to go back with Yi Junqing. Even if her longing for him was a disaster, she still had her own principles. "Moen, I'm sorry. When we left Great Shu, Junqing really didn't think that such a big thing would happen. Ever since he found out that the mysterious person had saved Nameless and injured Han Genie and Yin Shui, as well as Yi Hongyi, Yi Junqing was filled with regret. He had only left Yarrow Moen for a month and such a big thing had happened. He suddenly felt that his choice back then was wrong. Since his departure hadn't allowed Yarrow Moen to escape danger, he should have kept Yarrow Moen by his side. At the very least, when danger approached, he would be able to face it with her. With Genie here, no matter how big the matter, Moen will be safe and sound. Yarrow Moen patted Han Genie's back, her voice as calm as water. "Moen, take good care of Supremacy Han." Junqing bids farewell. His heart fell silent for a moment. When Yi Junqing saw Yarrow Moen's hand gently resting on Han Genie's body, his heart inexplicably tightened. He didn't know where this resentment came from, but he blurted out these words that went against his heart. "Go on, did Moen hold you back?" Yarrow Moen was also unhappy, so she turned her back to Yi Junqing. When she heard Yi Junqing's footsteps getting further and further away, Yarrow Moen's heart was filled with indignation. "Couldn't you have begged a little longer? He's already gone before you start crying. Isn't it too late?" When Han Genie saw Yarrow Moen's misty eyes, he felt an indescribable pain in his heart. Chapter 510. Only when Yarrow Moen entered the carriage did Master Qiao regain his senses. "Yarrow Moen, what kind of attitude is this? You can't speak nonsense. When did this old man ever allow someone to destroy a flower?" Master Qiao was enraged. He couldn't compromise over something that would damage his reputation. "Forget it, count her attitude on this Supreme Lord. Drive the carriage." Han Genie knew that Yarrow Moen was upset, so she helped her block Master Qiao's questioning. Master Qiao had originally wanted to argue with Yarrow Moen in a righteous manner, but the other party had a backer and the backer was his master. Thus, he could only endure and wait for a chance to retaliate. Just as the carriage was about to leave, Ben Lei suddenly appeared and blocked the carriage without any regard for his life. "Master, Ben Lei has something to report." Master Qiao tugged on the reins and turned to look towards Yarrow Moen. He hoped that Ben Lei would be able to take this damned jinx away. In the forest, Yarrow Moen was clutching the leaves in her hands as she unintentionally tore them into strips and threw them on the ground. "Master, ever since Prince returned from Great Shu, he seemed to have changed. He spent all day and night researching tactics. In 3 days, he took down Minute City. Before he came to rescue Master, Prince had just taken down Yuanyang City. Before he even entered Yuanyang residence, he received news that Master was in trouble, so he rushed over to Qingfeng Mountain. Ben Lei used the most concise words to describe Yi Junqing's achievements in the past month. So you think that if this consort isn't by his side, he'll be incomparably wise and far-sighted. Yarrow Moen felt that this was what Ben Lei was trying to say. Master is wise. Ben Lei just wants to say that in order to save Master, Prince hasn't slept for 5 days. Ben Lei had always been clumsy with words, especially when he saw Yarrow Moen's current expression. Then is this consort's matter disturbing his rest? Yarrow Moen was verbally making things difficult for Ben Lei, but she couldn't remain indifferent. Indeed, this had been her original goal. Perhaps if she wasn't present, Yi Junqing wouldn't have any burdens, so he would use a month to take down 2 cities. This kind of speed could definitely be called godly speed. After all, the enemy's strength and hers were evenly matched, so it wasn't impossible for them to fight for half a year. Aya, Master, you know that Ben Lei is clumsy with words. What Ben Lei means is. Ben Lei panicked. Why didn't his master understand what he was saying? Don't say anything if you're dumb. I don't want to know what you mean. You only need to know Ben Gong's intentions, said Yarrow Moen solemnly as she sealed Ben Lei's mouth. Then what does master mean? Ben Lei lifted his head and looked towards Yarrow Moen with hope in his eyes. You can scram now. Get out of my sight without stopping. She glanced towards Ben Lei. What Ben Lei feared the most was Yarrow Moen's gaze that was as sharp as the wind, so he could only hang his head and leave. Yarrow Moen inwardly let out a long sigh of relief as she watched Ben Lei walk away. She had only just turned around when she saw that red dress leisurely leaning against the tree. That red dot in the midst of a myriad of greenery was enough to topple the world. However, right now, Yarrow Moen really wasn't in the mood to appreciate Yang Nanxing's heavenly beauty. Not only was she not in the mood, she didn't even lift her eyes. Ben Lei means that in order to fulfill your wish, Yi Junqing is willing to give up his life. Yang Nanxing held a leaf between his lips. His gaze was filled with an indescribable charm. Even a nun who had cultivated for many years and had no distractions would feel her heart flutter when she saw this scene. This was what Yarrow Moen thought. Moen has never forced him. Yarrow Moen denied Yang Nanxing's accusations. Back when Yi Junqing had been present, she hadn't even dared to look at him closely. She was afraid that a single glance would cause her to lose the courage to leave. So you didn't. If you didn't, then why did you leave him? Why did you say that you would leave Morshin's revenge to him and that you wouldn't interfere? The meaning of your words is clearly that you despise Yi Junqing for walking too slowly, so you're extremely disappointed. That's why if the eye doesn't see, the heart won't be vexed, right? Yang Nanxing lifted his brows as he looked towards Yarrow Moen. He thought that his reasoning was reasonable, but Yarrow Moen only smiled coldly. What are you smiling about? Asked Yang Nanxing disapprovingly. I'll have to trouble you to return to the private school and study properly and practice your calligraphy. Your words are completely illogical and don't match the cause. Also, your calligraphy is as elegant as a dancing dragon and as a dancing phoenix. Dare I ask, after you finish writing, will you be able to recognize it? Asked Yarrow Moen mockingly. Yarrow Moen, you can insult my logic, but you can't insult my calligraphy. This Alliance Master's teacher is the great calligrapher Wei Minute. Do you know that? Yang Nanxing felt that his personality was being looked down upon, so he retorted loudly. Wei Minute, Moen, I know, but I didn't know that he was actually blind. Yarrow Moen shook her head regretfully. Blind? Hey, Yarrow Moen, what do you mean? Yang Nanxing felt like he was fuming. If he wasn't blind, how could he have accepted you as his disciple? Before Yarrow Moen could reply, a cold voice drifted over. Yarrow Moen looked in the direction of the voice and couldn't help but purse her lips when she saw that gorgeous green robe. It seemed that Yang Nanxing wasn't in the mood to nag at her anymore. Yarrow Moen, this Alliance Master is telling you. Yi Junqing is fighting with his life on the line just to fulfill your wish. If you still want Yi Junqing to keep his life and sit on the throne of Great Chu's Emperor, then hurry back. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. That's all I have to say. The moment he saw my Ji, Yang Nanxing felt every hair on his body stand up straight. Immediately after, he used his lightness skill of leaving no trace to run away. Yang Nanxing, You still owe this seat a wedding. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, my G will chase you back. My G left Yarrow Moen behind and chased after him. Even when Yarrow Moen returned to the carriage, she still couldn't calm the shock in her heart. His primordial yang had also been conquered. What a fast speed. She wondered what kind of price Yi Junqing had to pay. On the way, Grandfather Qiao and Yarrow Moen could be said to be loathsome to each other. In order to prevent Yarrow Moen from making irresponsible remarks, Grandfather Qiao took the initiative to tell her how he had escaped from the brothel. It turned out that two guests had taken a liking to Grandfather Qiao at the same time and had actually started fighting over him. They fought until the sky darkened and the sun and moon lost their light. It was unknown who had been the one to unseal Grandfather Qiao's acupuncture points. The consequences were obvious. Not to mention those two guests, even the passers-by cleaning the toilets in the brothel had been beaten by Grandfather Qiao to the point that even their parents wouldn't be able to recognize them. Honorable Lord, Moen feels that if Grandfather Qiao doesn't become the steward of 10,000 Imperial City one day, he'll still be able to get rich with this mouth of his, said Yarrow Moen as she handed the water to Han Genie. Yarrow Moen, are you doubting this old man's words? This old man swears that everything I said just now was the truth, otherwise I'll be struck by lightning. Grandfather Qiao panicked. This matter concerned his reputation, so he couldn't back down even half a step. Everyone swears that they'll be struck by lightning. The god of thunder really is tired to death. Yarrow Moen disagreed. Yarrow Moen, what do I have to do for you to believe me? Asked Grandfather Qiao anxiously. Then Grandfather Qiao, bring that guest of yours over. Moen will personally ask him, suggested Yarrow Moen. What guest? There's no guest at all. On the way, Yarrow Moen and Grandfather Qiao had been tangling over the matter of the brothel the entire way. Han Genie watched coldly from the side and knew that Yarrow Moen didn't really want to argue with Grandfather Qiao. She was just trying to divert his attention. Han Genie suddenly felt a bit regretful. Perhaps at that moment, his coughing was unnecessary. If going back with Yi Junqing could make Yarrow Moen smile from the bottom of her heart, then he wouldn't mind letting go. Chu Imperial City, Central Dragon Palace, give it to me. Heavenly God, please give it to me quickly. Inside the secret room that had been used to refine pills, Yi Hongyi was curled up in a corner. His body was trembling and his ashen face was bloodshot. It was as if there were red lines embedded in Yi Hongyi's skin. Just a glance was enough to make one's soul fly away. Save me, it's so hot. Ah! Yi Hongyi threw the offerings on the table in a frenzy. The cups and plates fell to the ground with a bang and shattered into pieces. At this moment, Yi Hongyi's hands were tightly gripping the table. His eyes were bulging and under the cold light of the night pearls, all of his exposed skin was covered in bulging blood vessels. Do you know where you went wrong? The deep voice seemed to come from 1,000 li away. The deep voice was as beautiful as rain falling on Celadon. Yi Hongyi raised his head as if he had been pardoned and suddenly saw a red pill on the table. It was called the heartless fruit. When he had first tasted the heartless fruit, Yi Hongyi had regarded it as a divine medicine. Now, as long as he took this pill, he would still be full of energy 7 times a night. He had originally thought that as long as Yarrow Moen came back, he would be able to use this divine pill to win back Yarrow Moen's heart and make her truly fall in love with him. But now that Yarrow Moen was gone, what use was there for him to eat this thing? Yi Hongyi's eyes were sinister as he gripped the pill in his hand. He fiercely crushed it and threw it on the ground. Almost at the same time, the burning pain in his body caused him to sink into a bottomless abyss. He couldn't free himself from the pain. Save me. Yi Hongyi rolled on the ground, his 4 limbs twitching and his eyes bloodshot. Above his head, Qi Kanglan silently floated in the air. His silver hair fluttered without any wind, beautiful and untainted. In the end, Yi Hongyi finally understood one thing. Thus, disregarding his status and dignity, he lay on the ground and licked the heartless fruit he had just crushed into powder. Only when he licked the last bit of powder into his mouth did the discomfort in Yi Hongyi's body disappear. Deity. Why? Facing the pressure emitted by Qi Kanglan's body, Yi Hongyi actually didn't dare to get up. He only knelt on one knee and begged. Because you've done something wrong. If it wasn't for you, the monarchs of the 5 nations would have died and the 7 nations would have fallen into chaos. Yi Hongyi, your empire won't be for long. Qi Kanglan disdained to converse with this kind of lowly commoner, so every note he spoke was filled with disdain. I beg for deity's help. We will definitely confer deity the title of Great Chu's celestial sovereign and worship him every day. Yi Hongyi sincerely worshipped him, not daring to have the slightest bit of doubt in his heart. This recipe will definitely allow your Great Chu's soldiers to fight 100 enemies and become invincible. The voice was still there and the air was still filled with that mysterious smell. However, the person had already disappeared. On the offering table, a piece of purple rice paper filled with medicinal herbs was quietly placed there. Yi Hongyi slowly stood up and reached out to grab the rice paper. When his blood-colored eyes looked towards that piece of paper, they burst forth with extreme killing intent. The days in 10,000 Emperor City were still outrageously extravagant. Yarrow Mo Wn stared blankly at the 200 or so dishes in front of her, her mind wandering. Yarrow Mo Wn, this old man is talking to you. Can you look at this old man? Ever since they returned to 10,000 Emperor City, Grandfather Qiao's care for Yarrow Mo Wn couldn't be said to be meticulous out of respect for the Honorable Lord, but the most basic food, clothing, shelter, and transportation were still extremely attentive. Grandfather Qiao, stand on the chair. Isn't Mo Wn just looking at you? Said Yarrow Mo Wn resentfully after regaining her senses. You. Mph, I won't lower myself to the same level as a silly little girl like you. The Lord of Honor has ordered that after you finish your breakfast, go to the hot spring at the back of the mountain. The Lord of Honor has something to discuss with you. Master Qiao repeated Han Genie's words. Got it. Yarrow Mo Wn really didn't have the mood to bicker with Grandfather Qiao. She nodded hastily and got up to leave. Yarrow Mo Wan. Grandfather Qiao suddenly stopped Yarrow Mo Wan. His expression was indescribably melancholic. His expression was like a baby whose candy had been snatched away. His eyes could squeeze out tears at any moment. Is there something? Yarrow Mo Wan was a bit confused. Her words just now weren't too hurtful, right? Yarrow Mo Wan, you should understand the Honorable Lord's intentions better than anyone else. If you don't plan on accepting the Honorable Lord and becoming the Honorable Lady of 10,000 Emperor City, then please leave. Imagine hanging a piece of meat in front of a dog every day, yet not letting it eat it. How cruel would that be to a dog? Master Qiao's analogy made Yarrow Moan's lips twitch a couple of times. If the meat bone could talk, it would tell Grandfather Qiao who is more pitiful. Yarrow Mo Wn smiled bitterly and turned to leave Warm Jade Pavilion. Chapter 511. On the way, Yarrow Mo Wan seriously thought about Master Qiao's words. Perhaps she couldn't stay in 10,000 Emperor City for too long. 10,000 Emperor City really wasn't big. By the time they reached the hot spring, Yarrow Mo Wan's legs were already weak from exhaustion. Drink a cold drink with this sovereign. Yarrow Mo Wan heard the voice and looked up. She saw Han Genie wearing a white light robe, his black hair casually draped over his shoulders. The water droplets at the ends of his hair soaked Han Genie's clothes. His imposing silhouette was clearly outlined by the wet clothes. Yarrow Mo Wan swallowed hard, her heart pounding. Sovereign, do you have something to discuss with Mo Wan? Yarrow Mo Wan felt her throat was dry and couldn't help but choke. You don't dare to come over. Are you afraid that this sovereign will eat you? Han Genie saw that Yarrow Mo Wan had no intention of walking over and raised his brows. Not at all, not at all. Yarrow Mo Wan smiled. She wasn't afraid that Han Genie would eat her, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself. Sitting next to the purple crystal jade table, Yaromo Wan cupped the cold drink with both hands and gulped it down. A wave of coolness entered her heart and immediately calmed her burning heart. Drinking like this is very harmful to the body. Han Genie casually poured another cup for Yaromo Wan. His rough voice was gentle. Drinking like this is very good. Yaromo Wan was a bit addicted and gulped down another cup. It's rare for you to be so happy. Do as you wish. Han Genie looked at Yaromo Wan and opened her mouth to exhale cold air. His thin lips hooked into a faint smile. The feeling of loving someone was really strange. It was as if as long as she smiled, the entire world would be as bright as spring flowers. If she cried, the entire world would be covered in ice and snow. Master Chiao said that Sovereign has something to discuss with Mo Wan. Yaromo Wan still felt that it wasn't enough, so she picked up the jade pot and poured herself another large cup. When it came to enjoyment, who could compare to Han Genie? First, he extracted the sweet juice from the crystal grapes, then he sealed it with ice. Then, after soaking in the hot spring, he would take out a piece and melt it in a jade pot. When it entered the mouth, it was refreshing with a sweet and sour taste. It was really irresistible. This honored lord has been thinking these past few days about who it was that injured this honored lord in Great Shu's throne room. When Han Genie said this, Yaromoan immediately lifted her eyes and looked towards Han Genie solemnly. Sovereign has thought of it. Yaromo Wan asked doubtfully. Nope. In the entire Jianghu, there are only 3 people who can exchange more than 10 moves with me. 2 of them died 3 days ago. The 10,000 Emperor City even sent a congratulatory gift, Han Genie said seriously. Congratulatory gift? Yaromoan almost choked. Yes, those 2 demons have lived to 180 years old, yet they still refuse to move their legs. You don't know how worried their son is. You should know that old people living for too long will harm their children. Han Genie explained in a serious manner. I don't know. Yaromoan snorted disdainfully. Had the morals of the world already deteriorated to this extent? Of course, if he was 180 years old, it would be the time for him to die of old age. However, when Yaromoan found out that the 2 demons were husband and wife, and that they had died from eating too much, Yaromoan felt that she was still ignorant and ill-informed. Then what about the other one? Yaromo Wan didn't investigate the 2 demons who had stuffed themselves to death for the time being and looked towards Han Genie suspiciously. If this sovereign is willing, Yang Nansheng can still exchange 10 moves with this sovereign. Han Genie was rather proud of himself. Then according to Sovereign's meaning, the people who injured Sovereign that day were not martial artists of the Central Plains? Yaromoan asked in astonishment. Of course not. Also, those 2 people's martial arts were superb. Although this sovereign was caught off guard, I have to admit that even if this sovereign was completely prepared, I still might not be able to receive 10 moves from those 2. Han Genie's neck that had just straightened softened and he spoke with a bit of hurt. However, this kind of realistic spirit was worth learning by Yaromoan. I didn't think that Nameless would actually invite such powerful helpers. It seems that Moan underestimated him. Yaromoan's brows were full of worry and her heart was filled with unease. Helpers? Ha! With those 2 people's martial arts, they definitely wouldn't submit to Nameless. I'm afraid there's more to this matter. As a martial artist, Han Genie was very clear that based on the strength of those 2 people who had appeared in Great Shu's throne room, they definitely wouldn't have placed Nameless in their eyes. Since it wasn't Nameless controlling them, then, they were controlling Nameless? Yaromoan's eyes trembled slightly and a bit of doubt rose in her heart. Words are no proof. Right now, we're only guessing. As for the reason, I'm sure that we'll find out in the future. Han Genie took a deep breath and worry flashed through his eyes. He didn't care who those 2 people were, he only cared about Yaromoan's safety. At that time, that person had clearly wanted to put Yaromoan to death. When he thought of this, Han Genie's heart felt like it was entangled by vines and he found it hard to breathe. While Yarrow Moen's days could still be considered comfortable, Yuanyang guesthouse's Yi Junqing had encountered the most troublesome problem since the start of the war. Prince, why is it like this? After Yu Funning found out that Yi Junqing was fighting day and night without anyone to serve him, she had come all the way from Mengyuan. Even though Yi Junqing had refused several times, Yu Funning had already made up her mind. No matter how Yi Junqing tried to drive her away, she wouldn't leave. Out of respect for Yu Qing, Yi Junqing couldn't say anything too harsh, so he just closed one eye and let Yu Funning stay. At this time, when Yu Funning saw that Yi Junqing was being supported by Ben Lei, she immediately walked over and asked worriedly, "How strange. It was just a small vanguard. If Ben Lei fell off his horse, that would be it, but Prince actually wasn't a match," said Ben Lei hatefully. The wound on his leg was throbbing. "Miss Yu, I'll have to trouble you to call Imperial Physician Li over for this, Prince. Ben Lei has suffered very heavy injuries." Yi Junqing looked towards Yu Funning after he was helped to a seat. "Prince's wound needs to be immediately bandaged. Ben Lei, go find Li Zhun yourself." Yu Funning didn't even raise her head to look at Ben Lei. She only cared about retrieving the best medicine and white gauze from the cabinet on the left. She didn't care whether Yi Junqing was willing or not, as she immediately removed his armor and carefully treated his wound. At the side, the corners of Ben Lei's lips twitched. In the end, he didn't have the elegance of a prince. Even if he vomited blood and died in front of Yu Funning right now, she probably wouldn't even turn to look at him. "Miss Yu." When Yi Junqing saw that Ben Lei's leg was still bleeding, he anxiously called out but was stopped by Ben Lei. "Prince, rest well. Ben Lei will go find that bastard Li Zhun right now." Due to all the things that had happened before, Ben Lei didn't have a good impression of Yu Funning. However, there wasn't even a hen in the entire guesthouse right now, so it might not be a bad thing to have someone like this taking care of Prince. When Ben Lei left the main hall, he just happened to see Lung Bingshin holding melon seeds as she walked. When he saw that it was this god of plague, Ben Lei ignored the wound on his leg and tried to run around her. "Little attendant, where are you running to? Aren't you afraid of dying from blood exhaustion?" A clear and melodious voice rang out from behind him. Ben Lei had no choice but to stop and slowly turn around, forcing out a smile. "Boss, can you eat the melon seeds by yourself first? This lowly one suffered a bit of an injury today, so I really don't have the strength to eat them. Is that all right?" Ben Lei looked towards Lung Bingshin pleadingly, his heart filled with regret. He shouldn't have begged Lung Bingshin to plead for him back then. The result of asking a tiger for its skin was that he would have to spend every day and night eating melon seeds for someone else without being able to eat them himself. "Take it." Lung Bingshin handed over the melon seeds with an extremely serious expression. Ben Lei fell silent and reached out to take the melon seeds. Before he could react, he was already caught in Lung Bingshin's embrace. "You, what are you doing?" Ben Lei panicked. He had never been in such close contact with a girl before. Even if he had, it definitely wouldn't be in this kind of position. "You're this young lady's person. Since you're injured, this young lady naturally won't sit by and do nothing. Don't worry. This lady has the best medicine for wounds. Once you've stopped bleeding, you can take this lady to find the pig that chopped you. See if this lady won't roast him alive." Lung Bingshin spoke with a sonorous voice. She was like a heroine among women, causing Ben Lei to be flabbergasted. Around the time of the 5th hour, Huan Heng, Helian Peng, Ju Chen, Bing Po, Ben Lei, and Lung Bingshin all gathered in the main hall of the inn. Everyone's faces were filled with worry. This old man has never heard that Great Chu had such an elite army before. Could they be the elite soldiers of the Iron Blood Army? Huan Heng twirled his white beard as he spoke solemnly. This marshal has also never seen this kind of fighting style. Although those soldiers' martial arts are average, when they fight, they have a kind of unafraid of death. They charge around recklessly and don't pay attention to tactics or strategies at all. I wonder who trained this army, but their willpower is a little too strong, right? In this aspect, Helian Peng felt inferior. Also, Ben Lei discovered that they don't seem to be afraid of pain. Even though they've been stabbed multiple times, there's not a hint of pain on their faces. Ben Lei feels inferior in this aspect. At the time, Ben Lei had always felt that he was a man, but after today's battle, Ben Lei's self-confidence had received a serious blow. Pain is a human's instinctive reaction. Aren't they human? At the side, Lung Bingxin spoke absent-mindedly, causing everyone to look at her. You can't say that. Ben Lei still admires them very much. No matter if they were friend or foe, soldiers who advanced bravely on the battlefield would always be respected. Hey, Lung Bingxin, why did you kick me? Ben Lei had just shut his mouth when he felt a sharp pain in his leg. He immediately grimaced and his face twisted. This young lady just wanted to demonstrate to everyone what an instinctive reaction is. It's like how everyone would open their eyes before getting out of bed. Of course, this is just this young lady's opinion. Everyone can disregard it. In any case, this young lady is only here to be a bystander. Lung Bingxin shrugged, then left the main hall under everyone's stunned gazes. Prince. Ben Lei endured the pain and looked towards Yi Junqing. Miss Bingxin's words aren't without reason. This prince believes that his martial arts aren't weak, so no matter what, he shouldn't lose to a vanguard. Also, this prince clearly remembers that my flame soul sword had already pierced that vanguard's heart. He shouldn't have had a chance to counterattack. Yi Junqing's brows were tightly furrowed. Since that's the case, what should we do if Jiang City declares war again tomorrow? Asked Huan Heng. Hang up the battle exemption sign for now. The most important thing right now is to first send people to capture the enemy soldiers and have the imperial physicians examine them. This prince also wants to know the reason why those soldiers aren't afraid of death. Yi Junqing's expression was grave as he waved his hand to indicate for everyone to withdraw. As for who would infiltrate the enemy forces, Yi Junqing had already thought of a candidate. The main hall fell silent. Yi Junqing placed a hand on his forehead and closed his eyes. Yarrow Moen's elegant and pleasant smile gradually appeared in his mind. Moen, Junqing won't disappoint you. Within half a year, even if Junqing dies, I'll drag Yi Hongyi down from the throne room. It can't be. What does this mean? Yarrow Moen looked at the commander's seal on the table and smiled bitterly. It means that Master must leave 10,000 Imperial City and return to Yuanyang to meet up with Prince. Master, this subordinate has another matter. I heard that Prince suffered a loss at Yuanyang at Fan Hu's hands and seemed to have been injured. Yue looked towards Yarrow Moen meaningfully. Fan Hu? It can't be. What a boorish fellow. Yarrow Moen was slightly shaken when she heard this. Her eyes were filled with unconcealable concern. This subordinate asks Master to quickly return to Yuanyang. Fengyu, Lei, and Dian didn't miss this opportunity to cup their hands and beg. Yarrow Moen looked at the four people in front of her and felt rather helpless. Did she have any other choice? That night, Hanjini entered Warm Jade Pavilion with a bottle of jade nectar that had been stored for 100 years. This Supreme Lord knew that you would leave, but I didn't know that it would be so soon. In another 10 days, this wine will be 100 years old. What a pity. Hanjini walked over to the table and slowly sat down in front of Yarrow Moen. He casually placed the completely red jade pot on the table. Under the illumination of the candlelight, Hanjini's brows were like peaks and his eyes were as bright as the stars. When he smiled, the world dimmed, the sun and moon lost their light, the river of stars flowed in reverse, and the candlelight was extinguished. Just as all the candlelight in Warm Jade Pavilion was extinguished, The jade pot suddenly burst forth with a beautiful 7-colored light that lit up the entire warm jade pavilion like a starry sky. So beautiful. Yarrow Moen felt that she had seen many rare treasures, but she was still shocked by the scene in front of her. Her eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. It's a flash in the pan, but it makes one not regret it. Looking at Yarrow Moen's exceptional appearance, Han Genie's gaze deepened as he muttered to himself. What is the Supreme Lord saying? Yarrow Moen was focused on the beautiful scenery in front of her and ignored the deep emotion that flashed through Han Genie's eyes. Drink, don't go home until you're drunk. Han Genie picked up the jade pot and personally poured a cup for Yarrow Moen. Yarrow Moen was naturally overwhelmed by the favor and wanted to return the gesture. However, Han Genie didn't give her the chance. Today, I'll let you be a big boss. If there's anything, don't hesitate to instruct this lowly one. Han Genie laughed straightforwardly. When this laughter landed in Yarrow Moen's heart, it caused slight ripples. Chapter 5:13. Thinking back to the first time she met Han Genie, he was just like a crow. Right now, Han Genie was like an eagle spreading its wings in Yarrow Moen's heart. Under his wings, Yarrow Moen felt warmth. At this moment, Yarrow Moen actually felt that Han Genie was the most handsome man in the world. Even Yang Nansheng couldn't be compared to him. Why are you looking at this Supreme Lord like that? Aren't you afraid that this Supreme Lord will eat you? Sensing Yarrow Moen's gaze, Han Genie coughed lightly. Then are you going to fry and eat? Or cook and fry and eat? Yarrow Moen said very seriously. Thus, that night, they chatted and reminisced about the embarrassing events of that time. They really drank until they were drunk. The next day, when Yarrow Moen woke up, she saw that she was lying on the bed with the blankets covering her properly. She vaguely remembered that someone had whispered something into her ear last night. As for what it was, Yarrow Moen couldn't remember. Yarrow Moen still looked back every 3 steps until she walked out of 10,000 Emperor's City. Yarrow Moen, once you leave this time, don't come back. Master Chow pulled Yarrow Moen's hand and said sincerely. Moen still feels that it's better to say goodbye to the Supreme Lord in person. Yarrow Moen didn't care what Master Chow said and was about to barge in. There's no need for that. The Supreme Lord drank too much last night and hasn't woken up yet. Master Chow saw that the situation wasn't good and immediately shook off Yarrow Moen's hand and made a gesture of invitation. If he hasn't woken up, Moen can wake him up. Yarrow Moen felt that this matter wasn't hard to resolve. Yarrow Moen, don't force me to release the dog. Master Chow bared his teeth and revealed an ominous glint. Master, let's go. Behind him, Yua slowly walked forward. She knew that Master definitely couldn't bear to part with Supreme Lord Han, but she also didn't want to see Master lose himself because of a moment of emotion. It was true that Han Genie was very good, but Yuan Yang wasn't bad either. After Moen leaves, you have to take good care of Supreme Lord, do you understand? Yarrow Moen instructed Master Chow. I don't need your nonsense. Master Chow snorted coldly. Then, he waved his hand and ordered everyone to return to 10,000 Emperor's City. Then, he fiercely closed the golden door. Yarrow Moen's eyes became wet as she looked at the golden door. She stayed silent for a long time before turning to leave. Only after Yarrow Moen left did that black robe appear at the city gates. The sky was overcast and the autumn wind rustled. Heaven and earth had become bleak because of the sorrow on Han Genie's face. What entered one's eyes was sorrow. Supreme Lord, if you have to make a decision, then make a decision. If you don't, then make a decision. Master looked at his master with pain. It can't be broken. What should we do? Han Genie took a deep breath. The curve of his thin lips revealed a hint of sadness. The snow fell silently, like Fan said, and said, Master, the 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. In the end, Yi Junqing still went out to fight because Fan whose insults were too harsh. He said that Yarrow Moen was fickle, dissolute and cheap, that she was ungrateful, that she had the heart of a wolf. In any case, he insulted everything that was harsh. Yi Junqing swore that he would personally pick out Fan Hu's tongue and feed it to the dogs. When Yi Junqing went out, Ben Lei, as the vanguard, naturally took the lead. As the two armies engaged in a chaotic battle, Yi Junqing's army of 30,000 was almost completely annihilated by Fan Hu's army. At this time, the vanguard that Fan Hu had sent, Di Hua, stabbed his spear into Yi Junqing's right arm. Almost at the same time, Di Hua's head was sent flying. Retreat. The fact that their commander had been chosen had no effect on the soldiers. They only cared about killing with all their might. Everyone's eyes were bloodshot, as if they were soulless zombies. They only cared about fighting forward. When they returned to Yuanyang guest house, Yi Junqing fell to the ground. Prince. Ben Lei hurriedly helped Yi Junqing onto a chair and ordered someone to call Li Jun. At this time, Yi Junqing had already fainted. Li Jun, how is Prince? Ben Lei panicked when he saw Yi Junqing's pale face and the sweat on his forehead. Don't worry, Ben Lei, Prince has only fainted temporarily. Perhaps it's because he's been overworked these past few days. The weather suddenly changed 2 days ago and the wound on his right arm also caused Prince to faint. That's why he fainted. It's no big deal. This old man will concoct 2 doses of medicine for Prince. I guarantee that Prince will wake up in 2 days, promised Li Jun. What? 2 days? Can't it be faster? Li Jun's medical skills were looked down upon once more and he left speechlessly. Once Ben Lei helped Yi Junqing into the room, Yu Funning walked in like a ghost. Prince, I'll stay here. You can leave. Yu Funning was holding a basin of warm water with a towel next to it. Ben Lei hesitated for a moment, but could only leave. After all, this was something women were supposed to do. He couldn't do it even if he wanted to. It was already late at night and the wind blowing in through the window was as cold as ice. Yu Funning shivered, then turned to close the window. When she turned back, she heard Yi Junqing talking in his sleep. Moan, can you come back? Every day without you feels like a year for Junqing. When Yu Funning saw that the handsome face on the bed was getting thinner and thinner, she slowly wrung out the towel and placed it on Yi Junqing's forehead. If you could fall in love with Yarrow Moen, why couldn't you choose Funning back then? If Yarrow Morshin wasn't the only one, would Funning also have a chance? Yu Funning smiled bitterly. Even though she knew the answer, she couldn't help but give herself a sliver of hope. The first snowfall of winter lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. By the time Yarrow Moen led the 400,000 troops to Yuanyang, she was already exhausted. Yarrow Moen handed the 400,000 troops to Helian Peng and ordered him to prepare clothes and good food for the allied army. She also told Huan Heng to increase the quality of food for his own troops as well. She also told him to write down all the expenses so that he could use it as proof to get money from King Lulan. Yarrow Moen's appearance caused Huan Heng and Helian Peng to be exceptionally excited. Of course, the reason they were excited wasn't because of Yarrow Moen herself, but because of the 400,000 troops and the boundless wealth she had brought. However, Ben Lei was truly overjoyed. In front of the residence, Yarrow Moen, Fengyu, Lei, and Dian had just entered when they saw a carriage speeding over. Subordinate Yin Shui kowtows in salute to master. After a month, Yin Shui had recovered from her injuries and asked around for Yarrow Moen's whereabouts. When she found out that Yarrow Moen was in Myriad Imperial City, she left Great Shu with Ting Yu. Later, when she found out that Yarrow Moen had returned to Yuanyang, they changed directions and hurried back without stopping. At this time, Yin Shui was respectfully standing in front of Yarrow Moen and cupping her hands in salute. Her voice was filled with unconcealable excitement. How are your injuries? Are they better? At that time, if Yin Xiong hadn't been there, she really wouldn't have felt at ease leaving Yin Shui in Great Shu. This subordinate has failed in her duty and wasn't able to protect Master. These past few days, Master has suffered. As Yin Shui lowered her eyes, tears flowed out. Without waiting for Yarrow Moen to speak, Ting Yu had already rushed over while wiping her tears and threw herself into Yarrow Moen's embrace. Niang Niang, how could you sneak away by yourself? Don't you want Ting Yu anymore? Woo! Yarrow Moen felt a bit guilty when she saw Ting Yu crying herself into tears. Back then, she didn't tell Ting Yu because she was afraid that she would pester her to go along. She didn't know if she would survive this trip, so why should she drag her down with her? After the master and servant sighed with emotion, Ben Lei finally dared to step forward. Master, when you weren't here, this subordinate sent Fluffy and Jewel to Yarrow 2's place to take care of them. Ben Lei was still very afraid of Yarrow Moen. When he spoke, he would look at Yarrow Moen's expression from time to time. After all, he wasn't sure if Yarrow Moen would suddenly remember his rude words back in Great Shu. Is Yarrow 2 doing well? When Yarrow 2 was mentioned, a trace of warmth welled up in Yarrow Moen's heart. Master, don't worry, Yarrow 2 is doing well, reported Ben Lei truthfully. Prince doesn't know that Master has returned. At the side, Yua lifted her brows and looked towards Ben Lei when Yi Junqing hadn't appeared for a long time. When Ben Lei heard this, his mind buzzed. When Yarrow Moen saw Ben Lei's strange expression, her brows creased slightly. Something happened to Prince. On the way, Yarrow Moen had been constantly adjusting her mentality, but even now, she still didn't know what kind of expression to use to face Yi Junqing. That's right. When Prince fought Fan Hu yesterday, his right arm was injured by one of the vanguards. When he returned, his body wasn't feeling well and he fainted. However, Li Jun said that Prince is fine and only needs to rest for 2 days to recover. Master, Ben Lei has already tidied up your room. You must be tired from the journey, so Ben Lei will take you back to your room. Ben Lei's attentiveness made Yarrow Moen feel that something was off. Let's go see Prince first. Now that this consort has returned, this consort should at least give him a greeting. When something was off, there was definitely something wrong. Ben Lei was right. When he heard that Yarrow Moen wanted to go, Ben Lei immediately blocked her way. Master, you've already been on the road for 3 days and 3 nights. How about you move aside first? If you don't move, this consort will have Yin Shui help you. Ben Lei's reaction confirmed Yarrow Moen's suspicions. Under Yin Shui's and Fengyu Lei Dian's furious glares, Ben Lei could only move to the side. Yarrow Moen glanced coldly at Ben Lei, then followed a servant to Yi Junqing's room. Those who abandon you, yesterday's days can't be kept. Since Yarrow Moen doesn't know how to cherish it, why doesn't Prince give Funning a chance, and also give yourself a chance? On the couch, Yu Funning's jade fingers stroked Yi Junqing's hair as she slowly leaned over. The moment the door opened, Yu Funning's lips had just brushed past Yi Junqing's thin lips. Chapter 514. Inside the room, Ben Lei silently lay on Lung Bingxin's bed, his expression wooden as he stared straight ahead. His gaze was dull and lifeless. He suddenly felt wronged. There was a saying that Master had abused him hundreds and thousands of times, yet he treated Master like his first love. Could Master really not see his loyalty? That's where you're wrong. Didn't Yua tell you beforehand that Master was coming back? Why didn't you tell Yu Funning? On the bed, Lung Bingxin was very attentively applying medicine for her little attendant, her tone faintly tinged with tenderness. Lung Bingxin, if Ben Lei dies, there won't be a second person in this world who will crack melon seeds for you. Ben Lei's raspy voice sounded extremely miserable. That won't happen. Being able to crack melon seeds for this miss is a blessing. There are so many people lining up for this chance. Lung Bingxin didn't think much of it. Lung Bingxin, you have no conscience. Ben Lei was instantly enraged. When he turned over, he felt a sharp pain in his lower leg. I know. Next time when Master punishes you, this miss won't just stand by and watch. In reality, Lung Bingxin had already saved Ben Lei a lot of suffering by being the supervisor. This is bad. One mountain can't accommodate 2 tigers. In the future, it'll probably be hard for this inn to rest. After Ben Lei received Lung Bingshin's guarantee, he lay back down on the bed with a worried expression. No wonder Master would hit you. Even if it was this miss, you definitely wouldn't be able to keep your tongue. When she saw Ben Lei's sinister gaze, Lung Bingshin shrugged and continued applying medicine. What did I do wrong? Asked Ben Lei hatefully. One mountain can't accommodate 2 tigers, but in front of Master, Yu Funning is just a female cat with slightly sharper fangs. Tiger? She's not even worthy of that. Ever since Lung Bingshin had started following Yarrow Moen, her admiration for her had increased day by day. This was especially true when Yarrow Moen personally led 400,000 elite soldiers and received King Lolan's full support. This kind of heroine had never been seen before. When Yi Junqing saw Yarrow Moen, she was in the hall discussing the matter of Jiang City with Huan Heng and Helian Peng. Marshal Yarrow means to forge a full set of armor. But an army of 1,000,000 soldiers requires 1,000,000 taels of gold. Huan Heng agreed with Yarrow Moen's suggestion, but 1,000,000 gold taels wasn't a small amount. Although Meng Yuan had plenty of supplies, it still wasn't enough. Old General Huan, there's no need to worry about money. Moen has already sent a messenger pigeon yesterday, hoping that King Lulan can think of a way to send the gold to Yuanyang within 10 days. Now that the gold from Meng Yuan has been sent to the barracks, old General Huan's responsibility is to search for blacksmiths. In truth, Yarrow Moen felt that there was no need for every soldier to have a set. Just 500,000 sets would suffice. However, she would be struck by lightning if she didn't take this kind of free money. Marshal Yarrow's idea is good, but if Fan Hu attacks the city again in the next 2 days, how should we deal with him? Yarrow Moen's appearance seemed to have given Huan Heng and Helian Peng a life-saving straw. In their most helpless moment, what else could they do other than grab onto this life-saving straw? Thus, Yarrow Moen had unknowingly become the backbone. The beginning of winter has arrived. Even if you pour water on the ground, it'll freeze. Tonight, I'll have to trouble General Helian to lead the troops to pour water outside Yuanyang City. The more the better, said Yarrow Moen lightly. Marshall's plan isn't bad, but when we go out to battle in the future, won't we also be stopped by the ice? Huan Heng's eyes were filled with worry. He felt that Yarrow Moen was trying to quench her thirst with poison. Old General Huan, you must be joking. Tell Moen, how can someone wearing golden armor that weighs several dozen kilograms fall on ice? Yarrow Moen smiled faintly, her eyes bright. This old man is muddle-headed, muddle-headed. Huan Heng smiled brightly. Also, have Ju Chen go with you when you're forging the armor. If we can change the shape of the arrow explosive rat and put it into the armor, it'll be able to attack the enemy at a short distance without injuring itself. That would be the best. At that time, no matter how powerful Fan Hu's army is, they'll still be made of flesh and blood, said Yarrow Moen meaningfully. Marshal, don't worry. We'll go do it right away. After Huan Heng and Helian Peng got up, they bowed respectfully. When they turned around, they finally noticed Yi Junqing, who had been standing at the entrance of the main hall for some time. Prince, how are your injuries? Asked Huan Heng worriedly. They're fine, replied Yi Junqing lightly, his eyes never leaving Yarrow Moen. At this time, Helian Peng tactfully pulled Huan Heng out of the room. Moen, you've returned. The moment Ben Lei told Yarrow Moen that he had returned, Yi Junqing wanted nothing more than to fly to the main hall. However, the instant he saw Yarrow Moen, he didn't know how to face her. Yarrow Moen was the same. At this time, the two people inside and outside the door silently looked at each other. Yarrow Moen suddenly felt like she should say something, but before she could open her mouth, there was someone who didn't know what was good for her. Prince, it's cold today. Why didn't you put on a robe before coming out? Your body is weak to begin with, so if you catch a cold, how will you be able to endure it? As Yu Funning spoke, she draped the robe over Yi Junqing and tied it even more intimately. In reality, Yi Junqing felt that it was his 20 years of formal education that had harmed him. Otherwise, he definitely would have ripped off the robe and pointed at Yu Funning's nose to warn her not to meddle in other people's business. Even if he froze to death, she wouldn't need to spend money to buy toilet paper. However, Yi Junqing could only think about it, he couldn't bring himself to say it. Since Prince isn't feeling well, you should return. It's all the same with this Marshal here. When Yarrow Moen saw this, she immediately restrained the joy of reuniting after a long time and spoke coldly. Marshal? So Miss Moen has become a Marshal? But was Miss Moen conferred this Marshal title by Prince? Or did Miss Moen call it that just for fun? Yu Funning's cherry lips curved slightly, her tranquil smile containing unconcealable ridicule. Moen is leading the allied army of Qi, Xia, and Lulan. It's not Prince's turn to confer the position of Marshal. In principle, Moen has returned this time to assist the esteemed Prince as the commander-in-chief of the three armies. Of course, there's no need for the esteemed Prince to thank Moen. Killing Yi Hongyi is also Moen's duty. I've thought about letting someone else do it, but now, there's no need. When Yarrow Moen saw Yu Funning's hands on Yi Junqing's arm, the nameless anger in her heart burned her. A woman being Marshal truly is a first in history. Funning admires you. Funning will only be able to support her husband and teach her children her entire life. Even if she dies of exhaustion, she still won't be able to stand on equal footing with Prince. Yu Funning's words seemed like praise, but they were actually sowing dissension. This was the first time Yarrow Moen had tasted suffering in silence, but she couldn't think of anything to retort. This Prince isn't feeling well. I'll be leaving first. Yi Junqing's eyes dimmed, then he turned to leave. When Yu Funning saw that Yi Junqing was getting further and further away, she gave Yarrow Moen a strange smile before turning to chase after him. Master, Yu Funning is being too arrogant. This servant will help you vent your anger. Behind Yarrow Moen, Tingyu spoke up angrily. Arrogant? Which part of your words sounded arrogant? If you go looking for her right now, people will definitely think that this consort can't tolerate her. At that time, who knows how high she'll have to climb to find a bamboo pole. Yarrow Moen took a deep breath as a trace of disappointment and frustration flashed through her heart. In reality, Yu Funning's words weren't without reason. When a woman sat in a high position like hers, even if there was a man who admired her, he should still keep his distance. After returning to his room, Yi Junqing sat down at the table by himself. He held a warm teapot in his hands in silence. Prince, you just woke up not long ago and haven't eaten lunch yet. Funning will prepare it for you right now. Yu Funning was very satisfied with Yarrow Moen's reaction. It had to be known that in this era where men were superior to women, it wasn't a good thing for a woman to ride on a man's shoulders. Especially since the man in front of her wasn't a normal man. As a legend on the battlefield, Yi Junqing had his own pride. If someone couldn't make him proud, then how could he possibly find that person pleasing to the eye? Just as Yu Funning felt that the first battle had been won, Yi Junqing suddenly looked up. Miss Funning. If this prince remembers correctly, you seem to have said that if Yarrow Moen returned, you would leave. How could Yi Junqing not know what kind of person Yarrow Moen was? Forget about being a marshal, Yarrow Moen was even qualified to be an empress. Back in Guan Osprey Palace, Yarrow Moen's every step had caused him to gasp in amazement. It was a pity that such an exquisite person was born a woman. Prince. Prince wants to chase Funning away. Did Funning do something wrong? Yu Funning's heart shook and her eyes became misty. The one who lost was clearly Yarrow Moen, so why was she the one who had to leave? This prince doesn't mean that, this prince just feels that. There were some things that really couldn't be said directly, but if he didn't say it, Yi Junqing felt that his future situation would be very bad. Prince doesn't need to feel that way. Funning is a reasonable person and also understands Prince's intentions. However, Funning simply wants to take care of Prince's daily needs. As the younger sister, Funning has a clear conscience. Other than Prince, if there was a second person in the residence that wanted Funning to leave, Funning definitely wouldn't stay a moment longer. Yu Funning stared coldly at Yi Junqing, making him not dare to meet her gaze. In reality, Yi Junqing was also feeling very guilty about chasing Yu Funning away for no reason. Since Yu Funning had spoken, Yi Junqing started to work hard. When it was time for dinner, Yarrow Moen didn't go to the main hall to eat. In Yarrow Moen's words, capable people do more work. Since Prince had fallen, she had more responsibilities. As a result, Yi Junqing's dinner was tasteless. Lung Bingshan snorted disdainfully. "Oh right, if Prince asks you to kick Lung Bingshan out, you can't agree," instructed Ben Lei. "Can't agree? If Yi Junqing dares to look for this young lady, then this young lady will immediately grab you Funning by the hair and throw her out," said Lung Bingshan coldly. Then before Ben Lei could persuade her, she had already started to leave. However, what Lung Bingshan didn't expect was that after Yi Junqing went around looking for this young lady, even Auntie Tian, who was sweeping the floor, he didn't look for her. Chapter 5:15. At this time, Yi Junqing was bitterly pleading in Ting Yu's room. "That won't do. Ting Yu is one of Her Highness people. Although Ting Yu doesn't mind being a villain, it's hard to guarantee that Yu Funning will think that Ting Yu has received Her Highness intentions. This will greatly affect Her Highness reputation." Ting Yu pushed the golden chain back to Yi Junqing. "Ting Yu, you know that your master doesn't like Yu Funning. Don't you want to share your master's worries?" Yi Junqing found this inconceivable. Ben Lei was one thing, but even Ting Yu had rejected him. This made him feel like the world had fallen into chaos. "Prince, don't speak nonsense. When did Master say that he didn't like Miss Yu? If news of this got out, it wouldn't be good for Master's image to be affected. If Prince doesn't have anything else to do, Ting Yu still needs to prepare a meal, so I won't be wasting time with you." Ting Yu twirled a strand of hair before leaving lightly. Yi Junqing was left standing there, completely petrified. Right at this time, Ben Lei hurriedly ran in. "Prince, it's bad. Fan Hu's army is attacking the city. Master has already gone up to the tower to supervise the battle." Ben Lei's words caused Yi Junqing's heart to tremble, and he immediately turned to run up the tower. The sound of gongs and drums shook the heavens and the earth. Smoke filled the air above the tower, and the air was mixed with black particles from the explosions. It was as if there was a black fog that obscured one's vision. Marshal Yarrow truly has a good plan. Right now, Fan Hu's army is several zhong away. Aside from throwing some black bullets over, not a single person has approached. Helian Peng happily walked to Yarrow Moen's side, his voice filled with unconcealable joy. "I hope so." Yarrow Moen furrowed her brows. The layer of ice was so thick, and Fan Hu wasn't blind. Since there was no hope of attacking the city, did he come out to practice? Right at this time, Yi Junqing had already reached the top of the tower. When Helian Peng saw that it was Yi Junqing, he immediately retreated. "Moen, the tower is dangerous. How could you come up so rashly?" Yi Junqing walked up to Yarrow Moen in a few steps and instinctively stood in front of her. "Prince, don't be impatient. Right now, Fan Hu's army is several zhong away. How could they harm Moen?" Yarrow Moen didn't think much of it. When Yi Junqing heard this, he turned to look at the other side of the gate tower. Unfortunately, there was nothing but black fog in front of him, so he couldn't see what the enemy was doing. Furthermore, there were the occasional explosions from the black spheres, so it was even harder for Yi Junqing to determine the situation on the other side. Since they know that it's impossible to break through the city gate tower, why do they keep throwing black balls, beating gongs and drums, and shouting so enthusiastically? What's more, they don't have as much financial resources as we do. Every black sphere costs at least 5 taels of silver to make. Yi Junqing still felt that there was something fishy about this. Before he could figure out what was wrong, Yarrow Moen walked around Yi Junqing and proudly walked to the gate tower. "Moen." Just as Yi Junqing was about to turn around, he suddenly heard an ear-piercing roar. Yi Junqing immediately rushed to Yarrow Moen's side and pulled her into his embrace. At almost the same time, Yi Junqing felt a sharp pain in his back. An arrowhead had pierced through his chest. Yi Junqing. Yarrow Moen stared in shock at the arrowhead in Yi Junqing's chest and her heart clenched. She wanted to use her hands to stop the blood flowing out of Yi Junqing's mouth, but she was powerless. While Yarrow Moen was panicking, several miserable cries rang out from the gate tower. Didn't Li Jun say that he couldn't get out of bed? Yarrow Moen's brows furrowed slightly as her gaze unconsciously landed on Yu Funning's hand that was supporting Yi Junqing. At this time, Yi Junqing had already walked to the seat next to Yarrow Moen. Fortunately, this prince made it in time. Otherwise, it would have been terrible if I missed Zhu Chen testing out his new weapon. Ever since he had been injured that day, it had been 2 days since he last saw Yarrow Moen. He really missed her. In reality, Prince should be resting in bed. What's there to be worried about when Marshal Yarrow is handling things? The moment Fu Ning said this, Yi Junqing could clearly see Yarrow Moen's complexion rapidly turning green. Moen, this prince didn't mean that. This prince. Yi Junqing was filled with hatred. He really wanted to tell Yu Funning that even if she didn't speak, no one would think she was mute. Zhu Chen, begin. Yarrow Moen didn't even look at Yi Junqing as she spoke coldly. However, her heart was pounding. Was this what Yi Junqing had told Yu Funning? How infuriating. When Zhu Chen received the order, he immediately put on the golden armor he had prepared earlier. Under the sunlight, the armor flickered, causing Yarrow Moen to look sideways. That wasn't the main thing. What was important was that Yarrow Moen accidentally saw that Yu Funning's hand was currently massaging Yi Junqing's shoulder. Prince's body must be very stiff after lying in bed for so long. Funning will help you loosen them. Yu Funning didn't even get Yi Junqing's permission before starting to move her hands all over him. Yi Junqing was just about to stop her when he suddenly felt a sharp pain under his foot. When he looked down, he saw that Yarrow Moen's foot was firmly stepping on him. In contrast, she was looking towards Zhu Chen as if nothing had happened. Yi Junqing was speechless, but he didn't dare to warn Yarrow Moen. He could only allow her to step on him without making a sound. Prince, Marshal Yarrow, Zhu Chen will demonstrate for you right now. Zhu Chen had always been confident in his invention. At this moment, Zhu Chen had put on his dusk armor and raised his hands in front of his chest. Then he lowered his head and pressed his chin against the mechanism in front of his chest. In the blink of an eye, by the time Zhu Chen raised his head, the 5 pots in front of him had already turned into sieves. As expected, it's good. A clear voice rang out from the residence. Everyone turned to look and saw Chu Morbei, who was dressed in luxurious purple robes, standing there with his hands clasped together. His brows were sharp like swords, his eyes bright like stars, and he was incomparably handsome. Your Highness. Yarrow Moen reflexively stood up, a faint light in her eyes. In order to save her, Chu Morbei had almost lost his life. At the time, she had been worried about the safety of Feng Yihan and the others, so she had secretly left Great Shu before Chu Morbei had woken up. Now that she thought about it, she realized that she had been too heartless. Chapter 516. Yi Junqing harumphed coldly when he saw that Yarrow Moen was a bit distracted when she saw Chu Morbei. Ahem. Marshal Yao, don't you feel like your feet are numb? Yi Junqing got up and glanced meaningfully at the golden boots that were still on his feet. Prince, you're delaying Moen's landing. Yarrow Moen clicked her tongue and walked over. Behind her, Yi Junqing's lips twitched and his gaze turned cold. If looks could kill, Chu Morbei would have died several hundred times already. Moen didn't know Your Highness Crown Prince was coming and didn't go out to welcome you. I hope Your Highness won't take offense. Yarrow Moen's eyes were like peach blossoms, her face like peach blossoms, and her lips like peach blossoms. In Yi Junqing's eyes, she was like a blossoming peach blossom that pounced towards Chu Morbei. And Chu Morbei was like a bee that was picking flowers as he approached Yarrow Moen with malicious intent. In this situation, no matter how unwell Yi Junqing felt, he still had to step in. This crown prince can blame everyone in the world, but I won't blame my crown princess. Moen, you really have no conscience. You just left like that day. Morbei was really hurt. Chu Morbei's thin lips curved into a smile. That devilish charm in his eyes was enough to kill. If it wasn't for the fact that Yarrow Moen had strong willpower, she would have definitely fallen for it. Moen was in the wrong that day. Moen apologizes to Your Highness Crown Prince. However, Moen feels that Your Highness Crown Prince didn't come all this way just to hear Moen apologize, right? In reality, Yarrow Moen was still grateful to Nameless. If it wasn't for Nameless' so-called sewing dissension, the situation wouldn't have become clear so quickly. Right now, 4 out of the 7 countries were on good terms with her. Although the South didn't surrender, they naturally wouldn't stand with Yi Hongyi. As for the Great Jew, Yarrow Moen believed that Chu Morbei wouldn't let Zhu Xian go until he got his fill. Crown Princess is still the smart one. This Crown Prince came to send charcoal in the snowy weather and bring my Crown Princess back to Great Shu, said Chu Morbei with a smile. Huangfu Juanxiu took this opportunity to walk forward. Reporting to Crown Princess, His Highness the Crown Prince was entrusted by King Lulan to deliver this batch of gold to Yuanyang. Right now, this batch of gold has already entered Yuanyang barracks and will be received by old General Huan, reported Huangfu Juanxiu truthfully. This will be hard on Your Highness Crown Prince. Moen can't accept the Grand Crown Prince of Great Shu personally escorting this escort. Yarrow Moen intentionally changed the topic. This Crown Prince is also borrowing flowers to present Buddha. With just a word from Han Genie, as long as there are bandits still alive, who would dare to have any ideas about this gold? Actually, this Crown Prince's main goal is still to bring you back, Wana. As Chu Morbei spoke, his eyes glowed like water and he couldn't help but point towards Yarrow Moen. Yarrow Moen is the commander-in-chief of our 3 armies, how could she leave just like that? Yi Junqing immediately moved in front of Yarrow Moen and looked towards Chu Morbei angrily. Your Highness, be careful of your body. When a woman marries, she will follow her husband. It's reasonable that the Crown Prince of Shu wants to bring Marshal Yarrow back. When Yu Funning saw Yi Junqing's murderous gaze, she didn't mind it at all. However, she didn't continue speaking. She understood that it was better to not overdo it. May I ask why Your Highness the Crown Prince went to Lulan? Yarrow Moen felt embarrassed and changed the topic. King Lulan seems to have gotten over this disaster. Although he can't bear to part with Sunshine Princess, the affairs of the world are hard to predict. He wants to see Jia get married while he's still alive, so this Crown Prince went this time to send the betrothal gifts on behalf of Great Shu. Chu Morbei didn't care much about Yi Junqing's attitude and turned to follow Yarrow Moen into the main hall. These 2 children have finally succeeded. Moen is happy for them. Yarrow Moen was very happy when she heard this news. That's also thanks to you, Wana. Chu Morbei's brows were as light as a misty rain. The curve of his thin lips seemed to have the power to enchant people's hearts. His slight smile actually caused Yarrow Moen's heart to waver for a moment. Your Highness the Crown Prince is flattering me. This matter really doesn't have much to do with Moen. Yarrow Moen objected. If Wana hadn't been willing to marry this Crown Prince, according to Great Shu's laws, if the eldest son is unmarried, the second son would have to be delayed indefinitely. The smile in Chu Morbei's eyes deepened. He subconsciously raised his hand and brushed Yarrow Moen's hair. When it fell back down, a 9-1 hairpin had appeared on Yarrow Moen's head. This hairpin was extremely beautiful, comparable to an immortal phoenix tail hairpin. It made Yarrow Moen seem even more beautiful. How beautiful! Ting Yu exclaimed in surprise. Yarrow Moen already had this feeling, so when she saw Ting Yu's expression, she knew that something had appeared on her head. Vulgar. Yi Juanqing's voice was neither loud nor soft, so it just happened to fall into Yarrow Moen's ears. Many thanks, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Moen likes it very much. When Yarrow Moen turned around, she deliberately lifted her brows towards Yi Juanqing before inviting Chu Morbei to sit on the guest seat in a friendly manner. It hurts. Just as Yarrow Moen was about to sit down, Yi Juanqing suddenly clutched his chest and furrowed his brows in pain. Your Highness, what's wrong? Someone, hurry and call Li Zhan over. Yarrow Moen trembled when she saw Yi Juanqing like this. She instinctively wanted to go forward, but there was already someone serving Yi Juanqing. Miss Yang, this prince might have passed the time to take the medicine. Could I trouble you to go to the kitchen and bring the medicine to this prince's room? Yi Juanqing reflexively pulled his arm away from Yu Funning's grasp as he begged. It's just bringing the medicine, Ben Lei. Yu Funning was truly anxious and looked towards Yi Juanqing with heartache. This prince doesn't trust anyone else besides you. Miss Yang, I'll have to trouble you. Yi Juanqing insisted on having Yu Funning bring the medicine. But if Funning leaves, who's going to help you back to your room? Yu Funning looked towards Yi Juanqing anxiously. Who did this prince get injured for? Does a certain person not have any conscience at all? It hurts. In this world, it's hard to be a good person. As Yi Juanqing spoke, he looked towards Yarrow Moen. Only now did Yu Funning realize that Yi Juanqing was putting on an act. Anger surged in her heart, but she couldn't do anything in front of everyone. She could only get up and walk out of the main hall to avoid becoming a laughingstock. Everyone fell silent in this situation. They all knew that if anyone stepped forward to cause trouble at this time, they would definitely be punished by His Highness later on. Thus, even though Yarrow Moen was unwilling, she could only go forward and help Yi Juanqing up. Your Highness, please wait a moment. Moen will be back soon. Yarrow Moen smiled apologetically, then helped Yi Juanqing out of the main hall. Although Yi Juanqing's expression was conflicted, a secretive smile flashed through his heart. Chu Morbei, just you wait. If this prince doesn't make you wait until the end of time, then I'll change my surname to yours. As Chu Morbei watched Yarrow Moen help Yi Juanqing leave, his lips curved into a helpless smile. Ting Yu, tidy up a room for this prince. This prince is truly tired from all this walking. As Chu Morbei spoke, he walked out. Your Highness, are you not planning on waiting for Master to return? Asked Ting Yu in confusion. Do you think that the esteemed prince's illness will be cured that easily? Said Chu Morbei meaningfully. Then he walked out of the main hall. When everyone heard this, they all fell silent. Inside the room, Yi Juanqing was clutching his chest with one hand while refusing to let go of Yarrow Moen with the other. If Moen remembers correctly, Prince was injured on the left side of your chest, right? Yarrow Moen lifted her brows as she looked towards Yi Juanqing. She just felt like there was something strange about this pain. Then the arrow that was shot from so far away must have injured the left side of his chest, but it must have also shaken his heart. Yarrow Moen, if you really want to go back and find Chu Morbei that badly, then this prince won't keep you. Yi Juanqing had no choice but to let go of Yarrow Moen and cover his chest with both hands. That's what Prince said. Moen will take her leave. Yarrow Moen wasn't used to sickness, so she turned to leave. It hurts so much. When Yarrow Moen reached the door, Yi Juanqing suddenly cried out. His handsome face was even more tense than before. Yarrow Moen stopped and looked back. Although Yi Juanqing had exaggerated a bit, she still couldn't bear to do it. Where does Prince hurt? Do you want Moen to call Li Zhan over? Yarrow Moen took a deep breath and returned to the side of the bed. This prince wants to drink water. When Yi Junqing saw that Yarrow Moen had returned, he was overjoyed. However, his hands were still clutching his chest as if he was conflicted, afraid that Yarrow Moen would notice something was wrong. Yarrow Moen took another deep breath, then walked to the table and poured a cup of tea for him. Before she knew it, it was already evening. Only when Tingyu came to find her did Yarrow Moen realize that she had forgotten about Chu Morbei's existence. "Master, dinner has been prepared. His Highness the Crown Prince is already waiting in the main hall." Tingyu suddenly felt that Chu Morbei's decision to return to his room to rest was extremely wise. If he really had waited in the main hall, the result would definitely be awkward. Crap. Yarrow Moen suddenly understood and got up to leave. However, Yi Junqing called her back. "This prince's chest hurts." Yi Junqing was like a child as he stared at Yarrow Moen with his large, watery eyes. He really did look a bit delicate and pitiful. Even if Prince's head hurts, you still have to endure it. He's a guest from afar and Chu Morbei has saved Moen's life. Moen can't slight him no matter what. "Tingyu, stay here and take care of Prince. If Prince really hurts too much, call Li Jun over." Yarrow Moen didn't want to think too deeply about Yi Junqing's motive for doing so much to keep her by his side. In reality, she knew that if she wasn't willing, Yi Junqing wouldn't be able to keep her, just like right now. In the end, Tingyu is Marshal Yarrow's personal servant. How could she be allowed to take care of Prince? Fu Ning should do it. For the entire afternoon, Yu Funning stayed in the kitchen guarding the medicine stove. She had already brewed 7 or 8 batches of medicine. It wasn't that she really wanted to brew the medicine, but if she forced her way in and took Yarrow Moen's place, Yi Junqing definitely wouldn't give her a good attitude. Sometimes, it was necessary to exercise restraint. With Miss Yang here, this marshal can be at ease. "Tingyu, let's go." Yarrow Moen really wanted to smile naturally, but when she saw Yu Funning gracefully walk over to Yi Junqing's side, it felt like there was a thorn poking at her heart, making her feel vaguely uncomfortable. Only after Yarrow Moen left did Yi Junqing loosen his grip on his chest. His expression was lonely. "Prince, Funning has already brewed the medicine. Please drink it while it's hot." Yu Funning deliberately ignored the sudden change in Yi Junqing's expression and attentively handed him a porcelain bowl. "This prince doesn't want to drink it." Yi Junqing struggled to get up from the bed. He wanted to fall back onto the bed, but Yu Funning persisted. She forcefully pushed the porcelain bowl in front of Yi Junqing. Yi Junqing was irritated and with a wave of his hand, the porcelain bowl fell to the ground with a bang, spilling the medicine inside onto Yu Funning's hand. The medicinal concoction heated up slightly, causing a large patch of red to appear on Yu Funning's jade-like skin. If one were to look at her, it would cause one's heart to ache. However, Yu Funning didn't make a sound. Instead, she bent down and squatted down to pick up the broken pieces of porcelain. In the process, she accidentally cut her fingers, adding hail to snow. Chapter 517. No matter how apathetic Yi Junqing was, he had no choice but to get off the bed and take Yu Funning's hand. "Sorry, this prince didn't do it on purpose. In reality, this prince is already much better and doesn't need to drink medicine. Just sit here, this prince will go get some medicine for you," said Yi Junqing guiltily. He turned around and took out a white gauze and medicine from the drawer before sitting down next to Yu Funning to bandage her wound. "Prince really hates Funning." Yu Funning smiled bitterly. Under the light of the candlelight, her charming face seemed to contain faint sorrow. "Miss Funning's words are too serious. This prince isn't someone who doesn't know what's good for him. This prince can't thank Miss enough for taking care of me these past few days," said Yi Junqing lightly as he wrapped Yu Funning's injured little finger up. "Since Prince doesn't hate Fu Ning, why did you pretend to be sick for an entire afternoon?" Why did you make Fu Ning worry for so long? Did Prince just say that you didn't want Yarrow Moen to be with Chu Morbei, so you didn't care about Fu Ning's feelings? At the end of the day, Prince's heart is still with Yarrow Moen. Funning can't win against him. Yu Funning spent an entire afternoon reflecting on her painful experience and finally thought of a good plan to cut off all means of retreat. However, if this plan didn't work, then she could forget about being together with Yi Junqing for the rest of her life. Miss Funning. Yi Junqing felt awkward and couldn't think of a better way to respond. Prince doesn't need to explain. Funning should have known that no matter if Yarrow Moen is the Empress of Chu, the consort of the Crown Prince of Shu, or Marshal Yarrow, in Prince's heart, she only has one identity, and that is Prince's lover in this life. Is Funning right? Yu Funning's voice was slightly sorrowful. Yarrow Moen was so lucky to have Yi Junqing treat her so deeply. That's right. In this prince's heart, Yarrow Moen is unique. In this life, this prince will never fall in love with anyone else besides Yarrow Moen, said Yi Junqing solemnly, but in reality, he was trying to make Funning give up. If Prince wasn't so devoted, Funning wouldn't have fallen in love with Prince. Yu Funning's lips curved in a bitter smile. When her beautiful eyes landed on Yi Junqing's bandaged little finger, a tear appeared in her eye. I'm sorry. Yi Junqing didn't know what else to say besides these 3 words. Since I know Prince's heart, Fu would rather help Prince win Yarrow Moen's heart. Yu Funning restrained the sorrow in her eyes and lifted her head. You are helping this prince. Yi Junqing looked towards Yu Funning suspiciously. Right now, everyone knows that Yarrow Moen is Chu Morbei's crown princess and Chu Morbei has already come knocking on our door. If Prince doesn't think of a way, once Yarrow Moen is taken away by Chu Morbei, will there still be a chance for her to return? Said Yu Funning solemnly. That was just a scheme, it wasn't real. Refuted Yi Junqing anxiously. But other than the prince and a few others who knew that it was a scheme, who else knew? The world only knows that the current Yarrow Moen is Chu Morbei's woman. Yu Funning cruelly stated the truth. I won't. Moen would never leave with that bastard. Moen has always hated Chu Morbei the most. She has hated him since a long time ago. Yi Junqing was a little flustered as he consoled himself. Hate you? When Prince first entered Guan Osprey Palace, did you like Yarrow Moen? Yu Funning hit the nail on the head. No. This prince can't let Yarrow Moen leave again, since it will still be dangerous for her to leave. This prince is willing to protect her under my wings and ensure that she doesn't have to worry for the rest of her life. When he saw Yarrow Moen again, Yi Junqing had already made up his mind. This time, he no longer hesitated, no longer cowered, nor did he want to dwell on those meaningless questions. He just wanted to hold Yarrow Moen's hand tightly and never let go. When he found out from Lung Bingxin that neither Chu Morbei nor Chu Morxin had recognized the disguised Chu Shi, Yi Junqing came to a sudden realization. As the saying goes, concern leads to confusion. He hadn't recognized Yarrow Moen not because his love for her was shallow, but because his true feelings had been aroused. It's not that Funning wants to attack Prince, but this matter isn't something Prince can just say. First of all, Chu Morbei has to be willing to give Yarrow Moen a letter of divorce, and second, Yarrow Moen has to be willing to stay. Although Yu Funning said that she didn't want to attack him, in reality, Yi Junqing's head was already rumbling with rage. Then what should I do? This prince really can't do without Moen. Yi Junqing looked towards Yu Funning. Funning has said that she will definitely help Prince fulfill his wish. In truth, has Prince ever considered that if Yarrow Moen admits to liking Prince, then these 2 matters won't be hard to resolve? If Yarrow Moen isn't willing, then she naturally won't leave. Then Yarrow Moen can negotiate with Chu Morbei and have him write the letter of divorce. That should make things much easier, said Yu Funning calmly. Do you think that Moen will admit to liking this prince? Although we've braved life and death together many times, this prince's relationship with Moen is still ambiguous. This prince can be sure of my own feelings towards her, but I can't guess Moen's thoughts. Yi Junqing smiled bitterly as a trace of loneliness flashed through his eyes. That's what Funning was going to say next. Any woman would more or less feel jealous. Although Yarrow Moen isn't a normal noble daughter, she's still a woman. As long as Prince and Funning have enough scenes, it will definitely bring out that jealousy in Yarrow Moen's heart. At that time, Funning guarantees that Yarrow Moen will confess to Prince, explained Yu Funning. In reality, in Yu Funning's opinion, if Yi Junqing really was willing to put on this show with her, she had 10,000 reasons to believe that Yarrow Moen would leave with Chu Morbei without hesitation and never return. Inside the main hall, Chu Morbei watched as Yarrow Moen filled the wine cup in front of him, but showed no intention of raising it. "Your Highness Crown Prince doesn't like this wine?" asked Yarrow Moen when she saw Chu Morbei sitting on the chair with his arms crossed. "Wanna, what do you think would have happened if this Crown Prince had ignored you when he saw you in the trap and turned to leave?" Chu Morbei lifted his brows and looked towards Yarrow Moen meaningfully. "Ahem. Moen admits that she neglected your Highness Crown Prince. Didn't she already pour wine and apologize to your Highness Crown Prince?" "Crown Prince, please don't be so unforgiving." Yarrow Moen put down the wine cup with a bitter smile. "This Crown Prince won't forgive even if he isn't being reasonable." "If he's being reasonable, then there's even less reason for me to forgive," said Chu Morbei resentfully. He still showed no intention of raising his cup. "Actually, Moen feels that if your Highness Crown Prince hadn't jumped down, Moen might have discovered some sort of secret passage in that pit. Then she would have climbed in along the secret passage and accidentally stumbled upon a treasure that had been buried underground for several hundred years. That treasure is boundless. If it had fallen into Moen's hands, it might have been enough to buy several great shu. So your Highness Crown Prince, you have to compensate Moen for her losses." Since a certain person was being unreasonable, she naturally played along. "Tingyu, hurry and shake your master awake. The sky isn't completely dark yet." The corners of Chu Morbei's lips twitched and 3 black lines appeared on his forehead. How could he have forgotten that the person in front of him was the first ancestor of being unreasonable? "It's not impossible for this Crown Prince to drink this cup of wine, but you have to first call this Crown Prince Morbei. Remember, be gentler and more likable, otherwise this Crown Prince won't buy it." Chu Morbei felt that it was better to be more practical. "Morbei, hurry up and drink this cup of wine." Wan poured it sincerely. "If you don't drink it, Wan will be sad." Yarrow Moen wanted to disgust Chu Morbei to death, but she didn't expect that Chu Morbei wasn't the only one who was disgusted. At the entrance of the main hall, when Yi Junqing heard Yarrow Moen's coquettish voice, his expression changed like the pages of a book. "Prince! Prince!" Next to Yarrow Moen, Tingyu was the first to see Yi Junqing. She couldn't help but choke. This really wasn't the right time to come. When Yarrow Moen heard this, she turned to look and saw that the veins on Yi Junqing's forehead were bulging as if they were going to explode in the next second. "Junqing, Funning will help you sit down. Standing for too long isn't good for your body." On the way here, Yi Junqing had been hesitating over Yu Funning's suggestion. However, just now, Yi Junqing had finally made up his mind. Even if he had to make a desperate attempt, he couldn't let Chu Morbei take advantage of him. Has the esteemed prince's injury gotten better? This Crown Prince heard that the esteemed prince had gotten injured in order to save Wan, so this Crown Prince is extremely grateful. "Juanxiu, remember to have Ji and I pick some top-notch tonics for the esteemed prince when you return to Shu." Chu Morbei had a smile on his face. When Yi Junqing saw this clearly friendly gaze, it was like a ravenous wolf had roused his fighting spirit. "This prince appreciates your Highness Crown Prince's good intentions, but in reality, it's Marshal Yarrow who knows how to stand. The city gate tower is so big, yet she just had to stand behind this prince. Your Highness Crown Prince couldn't possibly think that this prince had deliberately run over to save her, right?" Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen hatefully, then turned to look towards Chu Morbei in disapproval. "So it's like that. Juanxiu, just pretend that this Crown Prince didn't say anything earlier." Chu Morbei's thin lips curved slightly, then he reached out to pick up the wine cup and smiled at Yarrow Moen. That smile had the power to bewitch people, causing their hearts to tremble. However, in Yi Junqing's eyes, That smile was abnormally dazzling. At this moment, Yi Junqing suddenly thought of someone. Thus, Yang Nansheng, who was far away at Phoenix Feather Manor, started to sneeze. So that was the situation at the time? Moen blamed herself for a long time. Since Prince had stumbled upon it by accident, then there's no need for Moen to worry about Prince's health. Tingyu, tell the kitchen that there's no need to boil that ginseng soup that this consort just ordered. Yarrow Moen knew that Yi Junqing was lying, but she didn't care. Chapter 518. The night of early winter was much colder than autumn. The wind blew and the chill seeped into one's bones, making one feel that it was pointless to wear more clothes. Yarrow Moen only snapped out of her daze when Chu Morbei took off his robe and draped it over her. What are you thinking about? Chu Morbei slowly walked to Yarrow Moen's side and looked towards her with a hint of playfulness. It's rare to see such a beautiful snowy scene. It's just that the snow came early. In the past, even when winter came, it would still be warm for a while. Yarrow Moen said embarrassedly, her heart overflowing with bitterness. Did she have to tell Chu Morbei that she was thinking about how a bastard was made? Cold. Chu Morbei saw that Yarrow Moen was rubbing her hands together, so he covered her small hands with his without her permission. Your Highness Crown Prince. Yarrow Moen wanted to pull her hands out, but she was a woman after all. How could she resist Chu Morbei's stubbornness? Are you afraid that this crown prince will eat you? Chu Morbei's eyes were clear as he smiled warmly. This made Yarrow Moen feel like she was being too vulgar. If that's the case, then your highness's taste is a bit too heavy. Yarrow Moen laughed. This action of pursing her lips made the stars in the sky dim. It really is like. Chu Morbei couldn't help but say when he saw Yarrow Moen's smile. Like what? Yarrow Moen looked towards Chu Morbei curiously. Like an idiot. Chu Morbei nodded, but his heart trembled. Back then, it was precisely because of Yarrow Moen's smile that rippled his heart that was as calm as still water. That should have been the first woman that moved his heart. Unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of beauties. How many peerless women in this world would have their hair turn white? TCH. How could your highness's intelligence be any good to be talking and laughing with an idiot? Yarrow Moen abruptly pulled her hands out and rubbed them fiercely as she looked towards Chu Morbei. Why don't we try? After Chu Morbei smiled, his expression became even darker. Try what? Yarrow Moen lifted her brows and looked towards Chu Morbei resentfully. She probably wouldn't get anything good out of his mouth. Try to accept Morbei, perhaps you'll change your mind. His deep voice was like rain falling on banana leaves, so clear and crisp that it made one's heart tremble. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but choke. Her gaze that was looking at Chu Morbei slowly shifted. Her face gradually turned crimson and her heart was beating wildly. At this moment, Yarrow Moen felt like there were crows flying over her head. After they cawed a couple of times, they flew away in a straight line. Your Highness Crown Prince, Moen is thinking that if there's an illness, you should treat it. Hiding one's illness for fear of treatment is a great taboo. Yarrow Moen looked towards Chu Morbei with great sympathy. Her eyes were filled with worry. What do you mean? Chu Morbei was very dissatisfied with the results of his first confession. If it was any other woman other than Yarrow Moen, even if they didn't pounce on him, they would be moved to tears. Has no one ever told you that you have masochistic tendencies? Yarrow Moen asked solemnly. Aya, I've been discovered by you. How can this be good? Tell me. Should this crown prince kill him to silence him? Chu Morbei stared blankly for a moment before he slowly leaned over to Yarrow Moen. His thin lips curled up to reveal his white teeth. Ah! Moen suddenly remembered that there's something very important I haven't done yet, so I won't keep you company. Yarrow Moen only knew that at this moment, every cell in her body was warning her that there was danger. She found an excuse to slip away. What important thing? Chu Morbei's smile became even more sinister. Sleep. Yarrow Moen sprinted away. Masochism? Then this crown prince will masochism for you to see. Because Huan Heng had been forging golden armor day and night, the first batch of golden armor had been delivered to the 500,000 soldiers in just 3 days. Coincidentally, Fan Hu's army was attacking the city at this time. In order to prevent the possibility of falling on the ice and pouring oil, they had put in a lot of thought and invented a kind of ice skates that could slide on the ice. Not only did the ice not cause them any harm, it actually increased their attack speed. They also didn't need to throw black balls, so they naturally didn't need to be afraid of the threat of pouring oil. If it wasn't for the golden armor, Yarrow Moen felt that it was very likely that they would be in for a hard fight, but it was different now. At this time, Yarrow Moen, Yi Junqing, Chu Morbei, and the others were all sighing in admiration at the power of the golden armor. Even though Fan Hu's army was as brave and skilled in battle as before, each of them brandishing their blades fearlessly, the golden warriors that Huan Heng had sent out didn't give them the chance to kill. The golden warriors all lowered their heads and aimed their hands at the zombie-like existences that were struggling on the ice. Thus, a magnificent scene appeared. Not a single person in Fan Hu's army was able to get within 100 feet of the golden warriors, and they all fell to the ground in waves. WN's invention has truly broadened this crown prince's horizons. It looks like this crown prince has no choice but to urge Shu's blacksmiths to work harder. Chu Morbei stood next to Yarrow Moen, his long and narrow eyes sparkling with resplendent light. What do you mean? Yi Junqing turned to look towards Chu Morbei and asked with raised brows. It's nothing much. It's just that 2 days ago, this crown prince ordered someone to send the blueprint of the golden armor back to Great Shu. If those blacksmiths work fast enough, Great Shu should have around 100 or so pieces by now, right? Estimated Chu Morbei. Chu Morbei, you're stealing. Yi Junqing was stunned when he heard this, then roared in anger. Juanxiu, explain. Chu Morbei had no intention of arguing with Yi Junqing, so he sent Huangfu Juanxiu over. Esteemed prince, it's actually like this. Juanxiu found out that the proposal for the golden armor was made by the crown princess. Although Ju Chen and Ice Soul made some improvements later on, it's still the same. In this matter, the crown princess contributed the most. Huangfu Juanxiu explained patiently, but there were people who lost their patience. Get to the point. Chu Morbei and Yi Junqing practically said in unison. The main point is that Yarrow Moen is our Great Shu's crown princess, so the idea of the golden armor that she suggested should also belong to Great Shu. Great Shu will take into account the fact that the esteemed prince has saved the crown princess from danger so many times, so Great Shu will no longer pursue prince's evil theft. Chapter 519. On top of the city gate tower, Yang Nanxing was dressed in a flowing red robe. The hem of his robe billowed with golden waves. As the wind blew, the hem of his robe fluttered. His fluttering ink-black hair matched with his red robe. It was an indescribable scene that could topple the heavens and earth. Little Moen, long time no see. A man that was as breathtaking as an immortal floated over and landed silently in front of Yarrow Moen like a feather. His exquisite and perfect facial features and charming eyes that could captivate one's soul, Yang Nanxing, who was so beautiful that he didn't seem like an ordinary person, once again shocked Yarrow Moen. When they first met, Yarrow Moen had coveted Yang Nanxing's beauty. Although his beauty hadn't softened Yarrow Moen's heart in the slightest, she had to admit that Yang Nanxing's face definitely had the qualifications to be pleasing to the eye. You're dressed like this. You want to be a courtesan? Yarrow Moen couldn't bear to look away and asked with raised brows. If little Moen is willing to be Nanxing's guest, Nanxing can consider it. Yang Nanxing lifted his lips into a faint smile. His charming eyes seemed to contain a misty power that could turn all living things upside down. Yarrow Moen's heart trembled and she was momentarily dazed. Yang Nanxing, this crown prince's tolerance has a bottom line. Aren't you going too far by seducing this crown prince's crown consort in front of this crown prince? Chu Morbei became even more unconfident in Yang Nanxing's appearance. TSK. Just who's seducing who? Look at your crown consort, where's her saliva flowing to? Ayaya, little Moen, don't look at Nanxing like that, this servant is embarrassed. As soon as Yang Nanxing's words came out, the people in the city tower felt as if they were being struck by heavenly thunder. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, striking them until they were charred on the outside and tender on the inside. Big brother, can you speak properly? Can you not? Yarrow Moen was heartbroken. This pillously handsome man just had to have a problem with his brain. The heavens were jealous of his beauty. Little Moen, don't go. Nanxing still wants to catch up with you, hey. As soon as Yang Nanxing spoke, Yarrow Moen dragged Chu Morbei away like a hurricane, leaving behind only a cloud of smoke. May I ask who you are? Yi Junqing, who had been standing in a daze for a long time, stepped forward uncertainly. You don't recognize your most adorable and masculine senior brother? Yang Nanxing's voice finally returned to normal as he lifted his brows towards Yi Junqing. Yang Nanxing, are you all right? Were you possessed by a ghost just now? Yi Junqing sighed heavily before finally daring to walk over to Yang Nanxing's side. Didn't you tell me to help you seduce Yarrow Moen? Just this set of clothes alone cost me over 10,000 taels of silver. It's on your tab. Yang Nanxing was just saying it. He didn't really want Yi Junqing's money, but to his surprise, Yi Junqing actually agreed. It's just 10,000 taels of silver. This prince will give you 10,000 taels of gold, but the condition is that you have to seduce Yarrow Moen, vowed Yi Junqing. If this alliance master really seduces you, will you regret it? Yang Nanxing narrowed his long and narrow eyes, his thin lips curling into an extremely demonic smile. Try it. Yi Junqing bared his teeth. He was fuming with rage. Don't worry, it's just Chu Morbei. Watch how this alliance master takes care of him. Yang Nanxing raised his head that he was so proud of and walked down the city gate tower like a fire phoenix. Imperial Chu City, Imperial Study, what did you say? Yi Hongyi abruptly stood up, his deep eyes filled with a strong murderous aura. Yi Junqing has already found a way to deal with the invincible death soldiers. Jiang City is in a state of emergency. According to Fan Hu's news, Yi Junqing's entire army is wearing golden battle armor and the arms of the armor can shoot black balls as thin as peas. Although our army is invincible, they couldn't get within 100 meters of him and were completely annihilated. The guard seemed to have already sensed the cold air in the Imperial Study and his voice trembled. Yi Junqing. Preposterous. Yi Hongyi roared like he had gone mad. He suddenly stretched out his hand and the reporting guard's entire body floated into the air. His face was filled with unprecedented fear. Unfortunately, that fear didn't even last for a second before the owner of the body burst into flames and turned into ashes. Not even a speck of dust remained. Your Majesty should refrain from using a fierce martial art like the heartless art in the palace. If news of this gets out, the consequences will be severe. A deep voice rang out as Nameless walked out of the secret passage to the left of the Imperial Study. His hawk-like eyes were filled with disdain. You know that this is the heartless art. Yi Hongyi turned to look at him, his cold eyes spitting out flames that made people shiver. Eating the heartless fruit naturally results in the heartless art. Nameless walked over to the dragon desk and spoke indifferently. You know, that deity. Yi Hongyi looked towards Nameless coldly, his heart filled with endless doubt. Nameless doesn't know about the so-called deity Your Majesty speaks of, but I was fortunate enough to see the heartless fruit. This fruit is of the highest quality and is extremely rare. Although Nameless explained, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Cultivating the heartless art meant walking down a path of no return. Forget it. I'm sure that Commander has also heard that Yi Junqing actually forged some golden armor, so our medicine is no longer effective. What should we do now? Yi Hongyi frowned as he looked towards Nameless worriedly. As of today, Yi Junqing has already taken over Mengyuan, Ji Province, and the 5 surrounding counties, Guangning, Saiminit, Jiyu City, and Yuanyang City. If Nameless calculations aren't wrong, Jiang City will definitely fall within 2 days. Nameless carefully counted how Yi Junqing had swiftly taken over a third of Great Chu's territory in the past half a year. This kind of speed and momentum was definitely not something he had expected. No matter what price we have to pay, we won't let him take another step forward. Yi Hongyi clenched his fists, his eyes cold. Nameless has already found out that Yi Junqing used golden armor to defeat Fan Hu's army. From the looks of it, Lu Lan has also become Yi Junqing's ally. That's why they're spending so much to forge armor out of pure gold. However, this is also their weakness. Nameless' lips curved into a smile, but his eyes were as cold as a blade. If it could be said that everything he'd done back then had only been to carry out his mission, then right now, he really wanted nothing more than to utterly defeat Yi Junqing so that he could capture Yarrow and tear her to shreds. Weakness. Yi Hongyi lifted his brows as he looked towards Nameless. That's right. I wonder if your Majesty has ever heard of something called gold-transforming water in this world. Wu Ming stroked his half-black and half-white beard, his eyes revealing an unscrupulous smile. We have heard of it, but gold transformation water is mostly circulated among the common people and there's only a limited amount of it. The process is complicated. Yi Junqing already has a considerable amount of golden armor, so there's probably not enough time to gather the materials to make the gold transformation water, said Yi Hongyi solemnly. Since Wu Ming has brought it up, he is naturally well prepared. Wu Ming smiled confidently. But we heard that the golden armor is extremely powerful. Flesh and blood can't even get close to it. Even if we have gold transformation water, how will we be able to splash it on those golden warriors? Yi Hongyi's expression was filled with worry. When Yi Junqing had raised the flag in Mengyuan, he had thought that Yi Junqing had overestimated himself and was throwing an egg against a rock. But now, Yi Hongyi finally realized the severity of the problem. There were only 5 cities between Jiang City and Chu Imperial City. If Jiang City fell, half of his empire would fall into Yi Junqing's hands. The current Yi Junqing already had the strength and confidence to stand on equal footing with him. How could he not be worried? Your Majesty, don't worry. Nameless' iron-blooded army isn't to be trifled with. This time, Nameless has already ordered people to forge long snake-water arrows. The arrows are made of bamboo and contain extremely dense gold transformation water. Our army only needs to stand on the city walls and shoot. Not a single soldier will be wasted. Your Majesty can imagine, this water can even melt gold. If even a drop of it splashes on your face, what would the consequences be? Also, although the golden armor is good, it's too heavy. At that time, even if Yi Junqing wants to retreat, it'll probably be too late, said Nameless with a cold smile. Good. Very good. This time, we'll make Yi Junqing suffer a crushing defeat. Nameless, once we capture Yi Junqing alive, we'll naturally make you Great Chu's Prime Minister and Imperial Preceptor. Yi Hongyi promised the rewards he could bring out and laughed loudly. Your Majesty's words are too serious. What Nameless is doing is within his duty. The meaning of the iron-blooded army's existence is to ensure Great Chu's prosperity and people's safety. Nameless looked towards Yi Hongyi with a faint smile, the disdain in his heart growing stronger. While Nameless and Yi Hongyi were discussing, Yi Junqing's side really did take down Jiang City. At this time, Yi Junqing and the others were in the inn discussing the matter of attacking Yangshuo. Speaking of which, this can also be considered Great Chu's military secret. Shouldn't a certain someone leave on his own accord? Yang Nansheng, who was like a fire phoenix, lifted his extremely refined eyebrows as he looked towards Chu Morbei in an extremely unfriendly manner. Chu Morbei took 2 steps back, then took 2 steps forward. It wasn't until he noticed that Yang Nansheng's eyes followed his movements that he came to a realization. So the certain someone Alliance Master Yang was talking about was this Crown Prince. Moen, let's go. They don't like us getting involved. When Chu Morbei realized this, he very naturally pulled Yarrow Moen's hand and turned to leave.